Welcome to another episode of TCP. How you guys doing? Wait, I don't have the episode number. What's the episode number, guys?
253.
253. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe, for that. 253 is what we're up to currently. And today's all about hashtags. You know, if you look at the sidebar, you looked at the title. We're all about the hashtags today. Hashtag Texas Hard. Hashtag ContendersStrike. Hashtag Jokes. Hashtag National Boob Day. That's right. I looked at what's trending on Twitter today and I was like, damn, today was a good day to wake up to Twitter. And you know what? Most of those tweets didn't even have a warning about nudity. So get your kids off Twitter today. But if you're an adult, have a fun day. I don't know. Just under, you know what? I'm not going to go that far. There were some other more concerning hashtags and things that were trending that I'm not going to get into right underneath that. But I'm just going to keep the day positive and just only think about the boobs today and everything else. You know what? I'm out of here. I'm too busy thinking about boobs to think about ContendersStrike or whatever the hell is happening in Houston.
You know, if you were, creative with the English language, I feel like today is also National Boob Day in the Overwatch space. I'll let you pontificate on what I could possibly mean by that.
Jesus Christ. All right. I think I figured it out. Yeah. Stuff went down. So we're going to be doing just a bit of a tease here. We'll be doing a global power ranking next episode, and it's going to be a big one because we're going to go through all 20 teams, get a bunch of different thoughts on there. That's going to be a chunky episode. And today it's all about the news and the drama and talking a little bit about maybe what we can expect in the future metas as well. And then obviously next week, we're getting into major previews of Summer Showdown upcoming and what's going on with that. So, I mean, wow. What was the Dallas stuff again, guys? Did Dallas announce anything?
Yeah, they were they were doing some eyes. I don't know if they actually announced anything, but I think they also just recently put out a new merch collection. So I think that could have been it.
Yep.
Something like that.
I'm sorry, like eyes are reserved for our
merch connection.
Oh, come on. Like this is just like really misusing the eyes emoji, right? Now
I don't mind it. I think the eyes emoji is already a little bit too misused.
Yeah.
I don't mind it kind of muddying the pool a little bit here, muddying the waters of the eyes emoji to kind of dumb it down. It's a little taken too seriously. Anytime anybody uses eyes emojis, like who's getting dropped?
Yes.
Who we picking
Everybody
up, fellas?
Freaks out.
So I like it that sometimes eyes emoji is just like, hey, new shirt. Actually kind of fire. I don't mind Starfield Hawaiian getup. I might even cop one. That looks pretty fire. Blue fire.
It does look fire. Damn.
They upgraded at the tech lab.
Yeah.
Anything
else, guys, before we get started?
No, not really. I mean,
he's on his 11th liter of water.
He's the water champ. He's a
went rock climbing yesterday and I'm sore as fuck. I'm actually in a lot of pain.
I don't know.
What
being 30 and doing exercise? Oh boy.
Yep. How are your joints?
I think my joints ended up being okay. It's just the different muscle groups that are really not great.
That's fine.
I'm struggling to open doors. I'm struggling to turn door handles. Honestly. Man. Okay. Not a lot else going on. Very little small talk. I could talk about my experiences going to the cinema recently, but we'll save that for another boring day. We can pretty much get there. 253. News brought to you by AVRL Vista Bay, by Battlecry, Refine Bean, Bronzebot Buhau, Chari, Picasso, Chris R34444, Cash67, Lolshin, Porkchop Sammy, Rick Sane, Volamel Smooth Nuts, Your Misery, with YouTube members I Sam Jello, William Jesse, Vishman, Fireman 6, AK, and Chris R. And of course, big shout out to Juked as well for our current partnership. Joe, what are the keynotes there?
Yes, we want to appreciate and give a thanks to Jukes for sponsoring this week's episode. For those of you who haven't checked out the app yet, I don't know if anybody else knows, but I think obviously Avril might know, but Contenders is actually going on quite a bit globally. There's quite a bit of Overwatch to consume, and if you're not necessarily keen to things, or if you're not, caught up, or if you don't know when it's happening, Juked has not only long form, topics and communication, and providing Juke provides a good platform to actually discuss contenders and discuss like having long form ideas. Whereas, the competition, not necessarily so much. But we want to thank Juked for sponsoring the episode. They're providing a social app, not only a social app, but also an entire esports kind of package deal where you have the scheduling, you have content aggregation, you have a more positive platform. One of their big things is they're trying to reduce toxicity on the internet, and on their platform, they're actively getting into discussions and weeding out some of the bad faith actors. And this week, I think Avril mentioned it prior to this, but we're going to be doing some mid-season power rankings in a later episode. So we reached out to you guys, the public, and asked, which teams you thought could be, could be climbing the power rankings. And we had a couple of interesting responses. I think Atlanta is up there in terms of like not necessarily votes, but like community perception in terms of who is climbing the ranks, who's really getting up there, and it's
Based.
it's you're right, it's completely accurate. Let me pull it up on my app here. One of them was Boston. We had some Vancouver Titans. I think D Hulky, friend of the show, Vancouver Titans upcoming matches are canceled. Are canceled. Toronto, Paris, New York, Washington, and Houston. After they go 1-4 this stage, everybody will be going insane that they looked better than Paris. Move them up on the ladder. So like Titans coming in with the big win. We have some London love as well. So it's the platform that Yiska should be on to like post all these hot takes about why Houston is doing what they're doing, but just hasn't necessarily got on the ball yet.
No. I definitely I actually made a point now to also participate in other discussions. Of course,
sure,
I'm not going to create necessarily a discussion point there, but maybe I should. Maybe that's something I should look into.
I think it's probably, it's the better platform. You're getting your entire message across instead of having, people dig through comments and making sure you have to be upvoted here or there. I think it's just the preferred platform for long form discussion. So we want to thank Juked for coming in, and we want to thank the community for stepping in and always providing some interesting feedback and communication on some of these little polls. And we will get to some power rankings. So hopefully your favorite team or some of the teams that you're voting for in the comments are seeing some positive momentum. So we want to thank Juked, and we'll get on with the rest of this stuff. Speaking of Houston, I don't know if that's where we're going, but that's definitely on the docket.
Real quick though, speaking of rankings and all that kind of stuff, there was a Comp OW actually had like a consensus subreddit rankings that I thought was actually kind of accurate. It was like, the rankings is not too bad, because usually you get the odd individual takes that are like, well, I don't know, but consolidated together, honestly, it was pretty reasonable. I don't know where the thread is anymore, buried in there somewhere, but it was not even just the power ranking. It was awards as well, role stars, just like contemplating what the role stars could be, MVP front runner, rookie of the year front runner, coach of the year, all that kind of stuff. Interesting to see where all the community direction is in terms of what they're looking at, but it's not too far off from what I think should be about accurate anyway. So it's actually really well placed. Cool. All right, time to get into the reason why we're all here today. This is why we record today, because we get ahead. We get the drama comes out a good 6 hours or however many hours beforehand, and now we're just ready. This would have actually dropped, by the way, I think in the middle. If we did this at our normal recording time, all this would have probably dropped in the middle of our recording or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe a short after. Yeah.
Dive into what on earth happened overnight with all the Houston stuff. Halo comes out with a brand new report. This one's on Dexerto as well. And typically with the Halo reports, he doesn't. He leaves it only in the tweets if it's just kind of like a throwaway report, like whatever. Maybe the sources aren't good for that one. He specifically always says that he only does the Dexerto reports when he's extremely sure about what's going on, when he's got like a lot of sources. And before I even get into before I even just read out what the article was, he specifically says, I've never had as many different sources telling me the same thing. Houston have not been very quiet or discreet about this one. Okay. So here's what went down. Title says, sources Houston Outlaws seek to offload Overwatch Trio. Another Houston Outlaws rebuild may be on its way. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what you need to know is essentially Houston Outlaws have been trying to shop around to offload Pelican, Iris, and Piggy from their team, trying to sell these 3 players. Specifically, Piggy and Pelican might even be a package deal. And the reasoning being given, according to Halo, is that Dante wishes to revert to his main DPS role. So this is a key reason for the Outlaws looking to ship 3 players, the sources noted, is Dante, his wish to revert to his main DPS role. And that's the gist of it, but it's a pretty major thing. You know, we're talking about a team that's strongly at the top of the middle of the table.
Yeah.
Has done reasonably well.
Yeah.
Looking to get rid of potentially 3 players, one of which is the rookie of the year from last year.
They're
So
9-3, right? With 2 bonus points. They're doing very, very well.
They're for I think you've kind of touched on this, Yiska. Like for the team that they have, this probably could have gone a whole lot worse. Like they're probably overperforming what kind of personnel they have.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. They definitely
Because they're
got
limited.
lucky.
No
Yes.
main support,
Yeah.
no main tank.
Yeah.
And they've honestly done super well given the circumstances, given the restrictions on their roster.
Yeah.
Self-imposed restrictions a little bit.
Yes.
But yeah, it's wild how good the performance is. Now, what's crazy is when you really think about, and by the way, this discussion is not a confirmation or a denial of any rumors. It's just a discussion of the hypotheticals behind all this kind of things. It's like, if it ends up being that no one gets traded, because the other thing that Halo said is that despite shopping around, actually, I'm going to get a source on this. Just going to make sure that he did actually say this. Despite shopping around, I don't believe, obviously, they haven't found buyers yet. So,
yeah,
pretty certain that they've shopped around, but they've struggled to find buyers. Right? Am I wrong about that, or is that a correct?
I think that was mentioned. Yes, and I give you more. I give you more. I will tell you. I also heard that they contacted people. I think the framing of it is just what went wrong here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, okay, I think like now. I generally just feel like in defense of people under a dog pile, right? And to be perfectly fair here to Halo, this is not just like completely bullshit, right? Like these like discussions, or rather like, do you want any of those players? Like that happened, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So like that, it's not like he's lying or anything, right? Mm-hmm. That and I think that wasn't anything that was necessarily denied. It's just very particular how you have to be here with the language, and I guess we got to talk about this.
And I don't think it's too surprising that through shopping around, they might have had some difficulty in landing a buyer. And we will also, by the way, get into your thread of tweets as well in terms of getting to the depths of, you know, what is the actual intent here? Is it just them exploring options, or is it like a strong intent to actually sell? And there's a bit of discussion around that. But considering the different rosters, I mean, we look across the Overwatch League, things are pretty full. Like, even when we talked about like, oh, this team has a gap here, or this team, you know, maybe this player could go somewhere and someone's now a free agent, someone's LFT, but it's like, you look across the teams like, who's got room for players right now? Like, no one really has room. Unless you're just, as I jokingly tweeted, you know, I came in with a comic relief. You know, Hill's about to act up when he's noticing good players on the market. He's just waiting to snatch them up. And so, okay, Pelican will pay for himself. Pelican will use his own salary to pay for his salary.
I think he's like rich or something. Like he's got like his parents are loaded, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. But on a more serious note, it's like, but no one really has room for these players. Like, I'm sure Pelican would be an upgrade for most teams. Like, because you have to consider the only teams that can actually afford someone like Pelican. Because I know what his salary is. It's fucking high. It's not the highest. Don't get me wrong. It's not the highest salary in the world, but it is an upper echelon of salaries. And he did get a pretty nice like pay rise going from Reign to Houston as well. But it doesn't surprise me that ends up being a hard sell because most teams can't afford him, and the teams that can afford him,
they're full.
Either really full or don't need to take the risk. Like, for example, you could hypothetically, I'm not saying this should happen, but hypothetically, you could be Gladiators and be like, could we get an upgrade over Patapan with Pelican? Technically, on a mechanical level, you probably could because he is the Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
But like, why would you ever take that risk when you're already a winning team?
Yeah.
You know what the team dynamic is with Patapan. You don't know what the team dynamic is going to be if you bring in Pelican. It's a bit of a hardcore, maybe undernose, but still, you don't know how to. You don't know how you know how he was on Atlanta, but you don't know how that mixes with the current Glads players. You're changing team dynamics for potentially an upgrade, but you don't even know that. So it's just an entire risk that you don't need to take because whatever you're doing now, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's working. You're winning. You might as well keep winning. Yep. So the teams that can afford him don't need him, and the teams that want him can't afford him. So
it's also you probably like have a much cheaper option. Like I think a lot of the discussion is also a little misguided because we're all thinking about like short-term improvements that either organization is seeking. These are long-term plays. We're now getting closer to the window where general managers have to conceive of long-term positions, where they have to, preconceive what kind of moves they're going to make in the off-season. And like someone like Patapan, like there's reason to believe that this kid is still once again applying himself to Overwatch 2 and is still getting better, right?
Sure.
Like I think it's fair to say, like after his absence from Overwatch, like that he's still acclimating and like noticeably getting better every game or stage, right? So like whatever you think, I think it would just be untimely to even consider a trade there. But also, like, come on, it is his face. Like
team. Yeah, no, I don't. They wouldn't. It was a hypothetical to bring up because they're one of the teams that could afford it.
Yes,
teams that actually need to play like Pelican. And we can get into Piggy. Actually, Piggy as well into that conversation. Teams that need guys like Piggy and Pelican are the New York Excelsior.
Yes,
because they have Kellen. They need another tank, ideally, because they're a bit struggling right now. In fact, the Floriaki might be good to have a third DPS in there. And what's even better is they can bring Eris into the team and have 4 flex supports, which I think is really good. You got Gangnam,
they almost have Exodia.
One, and then you can also get Eris. And then I think once you get 5 flex supports, you can scrim the LA Valiant and do a flex support only game versus a DPS only game.
You know what, AVRL, I'm gonna raise you one hypothetical farther. Why don't they trade? I think what they need to do is like find the password to Libero's crypto wallet, trade a bunch of the NFTs to the Toronto Defiant to get Twilight, and then you have the full flex support team.
Yeah. Someone actually jokingly, but not really jokingly said, "Oh, Toronto's about to buy up," and I'm like, "Holy shit, it's kind of true." Like, they can afford it, and also they probably will. Like, they're probably the type of team that would. But if they don't do it, no one else probably will. So.
Is it weird to be like kind of happy that nobody has like paid? I'm okay with, and we'll get to Yiska's tweet because I very vehemently agree with it. But am I like crazy to like be kind of happy that nobody was dumb enough to like just pay the absolute premium for a player that like is good?
People must realize the bag Outlaws would have wanted is unreasonable. Like,
you'd have to pay the buyout and the salary. That's very expensive.
That's crazy. And I'm glad that like nobody's dumb enough to go like, yes, Pelican's on the market. Let me buy him.
Yeah.
Like, guys, come on.
But like I said, you'd need the perfect storm of a team that's both willing and able. And right now, you have a bunch of teams that are willing but not able, or a bunch of teams that are able but not willing. So it's just not going to happen. Which comes down to, and we're going to get into Yiska's tweet. Sorry, go on.
Would you not like if you're maybe like there's something to be said about seriousness and this getting to your player and sort of harming the relationship, But if I'm Chris Chung, why do I not just like write in the Overwatch Discord, yo, someone want proper for 2 mil, bro? Why not? Like, why am I not applying stupid tax?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Everyone
if
just-
someone
everyone
buys
just starts
that
slapping
shit, like,
dicks on the table and just
Yeah.
like,
like if someone takes me up on that offer, sure, mate. Like, my budget
I'm
is now
set,
set
bro.
for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm probably
This is
not
where-
getting a
this is where-
talent
this
like
is
that
where-
again, but
this
like,
is where Chengdu starts trying to sell Leave again, except they're actually serious.
I mean, I hate to
They were
say
trying
it,
to
but
sell.
yes.
They were trying to sell them already, and not for people that aren't aware. It's because Chengdu were trying to downsize extremely hard.
Mhm.
So I know there's a bunch of people like, oh my god, is there an issue with Leave? No, there isn't. The issue is he costs too much for Chengdu to afford, and Chengdu's kind of broke. That's the issue. So, but all jokes aside, I was about to get to the point that as we hit into Yiska's thread here, it's very likely that the end of all of this drama is that they don't get sold. Nothing changes.
Yeah.
I think the most likely outcome, the highest percentage outcome, is that nobody buys. Eris, Pelican, Piggy stay on Houston Outlaws for the rest of the season. And whatever Houston are doing, they keep doing. We haven't even, by the way, we still got to touch up on the whole Dante part of that. So we're going to get to there as well. And Houston Outlaws remain the same. Now, back to what Yiska said, that doesn't mean Halo lied about this report.
No.
It just means that no one bought. Because Houston,
it's
very
also-
well, are shopping, but no one's buying. And that's fine. That's normal.
it's
That
also
is normal.
doesn't consequently mean that all of Halo's report was right if, for instance, Iris was going to
Correct.
be traded, right?
Sure.
Maybe the Dante thing is a little dubious as well because I don't know. There's not enough like public
Let's get into the
knowledge
Dante
about
thing
that
because
kind of thing.
I think that is actually the most harmful piece, a part of the.
Okay, let's talk about it. So to reiterate, in the article, it specifically says a key reason for the Outlaws looking to ship 3 players, the sources noted, is Dante's wish to revert to his main DPS role. Now, Dante came out and he says on Twitter, apologize, there's a little bit of Zoomer speak coming through. What lol, I don't care if I play DPS or tank lol, I just want to win, stop spreading propaganda, thumbs down emoji. Halo's response, nice try, but this ain't working. Dante's response, if you think I'm selfish enough to try to great teammates traded because I'm not playing my favorite heroes, you are just a moron, been full out benched before and never asked for a trade. To think that I'd make a request to get rid of teammates for my own desires is just crazy. Now, giving benefit of the doubt that Dante is not the actual reason and he's not the one instigating these trades, then yeah, he's getting slandered. Yeah, he is definitely getting slandered by Halo here.
Yeah, and
It's a weird editorialization. That's also hard to. That's my big like issue with it all, and I really don't like have much to say on it. It's an interesting like report to say like, hey, these people are on the trade market. That's interesting. That's all it should be. That's it.
yeah, I think, and ideally you provide context as to the nature of these types of offers. Like I do believe that like maybe there's a little bit more aggressive selling going on. Keep in mind also the general manager of the Houston Outlaws is new. Like was recent. Like I think he even took over later in the season. I think Kumat was replaced during the season, right? And now Shadow is in that position. So like there's a bunch to be said about etiquette or how you come across, or maybe he's just a grinder and wants to get the best deal for and wants to hustle, right? So like even if there was a little bit of overselling going on, which I don't know, I didn't look into that, but I think the general idea is, as we pointed out, this team is hard capped on a couple of positions. You have certain problems. I think even if you, and I think as we will probably talk about this, like if Junker Queen is actually meta, you once again probably get a grace period where like everyone starts from 0 and one of your players has to learn Junker Queen, which doesn't like gives you equal odds against the field when it could just be Ryan and Winston, and now you're with your pants down as the Outlaws. And a smart team realizes that they need to fix that issue whether like it could be stage 4 that where those meta sit, or worse yet, in the playoffs. So solutions that need to be found, right? That these are much stronger considerations, presumably, than Dante saying, I don't want to play tank anymore, should intuitively feel right to you. I don't think you need to know anything internally in order to say that's true.
What do you feel about Halo doubling down, though? Because specifically, when Dante says, no, this is incorrect, stop spreading propaganda, Halo said, nice try, but this ain't working. There's a difference between him doubling down on the article overall and then him specifically doubling down
I think he never takes
the Dante part of it.
Takes these things like that. Like, I think he sees it as an attack on his entire point, and it has been the case for, like, if you go look at it historically, right? Like, he had the Valiant report where he rightly pointed out that the Los Angeles Valiant was going to release all the their players, but also that the organization had sold the slot. Now, that wasn't true, right? Like, the IMT is still in control of the Los Angeles Valiant slot as of right now. So, like, that being disproven, or like the Valiant coming out and saying that's not correct, it wasn't correct, right? Like, but of course, that's not the general.
I think he,
like the big thing that he wanted to have in his report, and I think like.
Right.
It is important to see the nuanced difference, especially because it probably doesn't feel that nuanced to Dante. It pretty much feels like a direct attack on him, and the fact that other players in his team are, just being looked at whether or not there is a trade opportunity, and him wanting to majorly win just feels pretty normal. I think that is pretty normal.
This thing about, just going back to the Valiant report really quickly, there's a bit of relation here. I think you can start to see Halo's trend a little bit here in that Valiant report, where he probably wasn't super off the mark with the Valiant sales thing. And what I mean by that is, it's probably not a big surprise that Immortals are trying to sell their spot. So
yeah,
he probably misreported, or like, I don't know, overly implied that a sale had already happened, when actually the truth is they're trying to sell, but the sale did not actually happen yet. Or maybe a sale was potentially on the way, but it fell through. Like, these things can happen. But he didn't report accurately on what the actual status was. He just kind of jumped the gun and said, no, it's sold, right? So that's kind of a bit of history of Halo maybe going a bit too far in terms of certain reports and how conclusive it is in terms of it. Like, maybe it's not as conclusive as he's saying, but he's made it out to be very conclusive, right?
Yeah. And I think there's value in, or you could argue there's value in bringing that information to the public, right? I will say, like, part of why I got knowledge of how these trades are constantly offered is because on this show, I actually talked about a trade of that nature, of that very hypothetical nature before.
Bing bong.
Right? I talked about the Violet Rascal for Karif in 2020 hypothetical. Once again, like Chris Chung putting his feelers out and seeing what kind of solutions are on the table, presumably. And I don't know that is whether or not, like, how serious that was. But like that's a a similar situation, and I learned that you need to give that context in terms of like how serious, how far along something is. And also, I guess in my defense, I talked about it 2 years after it ever became, or was relevant, and the Shock went on to win a championship with those two players still in that position, right?
Sure.
I think that's kind of what's going on here. And like if those there are other organizations that are constantly just like contacting, could you see yourself, doing that, and like a little bit of money here, like what's your asking price here? Because everyone has issues, and maybe there's a win-win situation for everyone, right? That's just the natural state of the business. From my point of view, those trades, because they overly influence, and more possibly like cause harm, as in this case it arguably did, they lie outside of public interest, even though I don't think, or no, they lie inside of public interest, but the risk-reward ratio is off here. And of course, like, journalists have no moral responsibility towards, trying to minimize whatever the team is doing there. If they're communicating that, like others, if the sources communicated that like that, then you can report it like that, right? I just caution towards, like, I think everyone wants to do net good. I think there's a way to tell this story. I also think, like, if you're doing it here, then I'm sure Halo hears of these all the time, right? So, like, maybe do more of these even, but just keep it, like, towards, like, something is being thought of, but this is not it all along. Nobody has seen a contract yet. Yeah,
correct.
You have to communicate the intent, right? Because otherwise, without the context,
the public will
like,
take you.
It sounds a little, but I was going to say it sounds a little extreme, but also I think, and this is where I get into, like, sorry to you guys, but, like, journalism, evil and bad, and just wanting clicks, and, like, how about we hyperbolize this entire article / headline, and let's sensationalize a little bit and make it out to be a little bit more dramatic, which I was going to say probably don't do that, but then I realized no, the whole point of journalism is to do that. So I guess
unfortunately, the name of the game these days, and that's kind of like where, like, there's a meta topic that's kind of interesting. If we're using what Yiska said previously on some past episodes about trades that were offered, put out in the market, trying to test the waters about, like, what are these, what does the marketplace say about these players? What can we really get here? When you look at, like, a successful team like the San Francisco Shock, and you look at a successful team like the Houston Outlaws, again, reiterate, circling back to, like, the start of this conversation, Houston are doing extremely well. But it's clear to, I think, most people that, like, this can only go for so long. You have, 3 more metas to ace? And if Piggy and Dante can't just ace those tank positions, then you're kind of screwed, right? You're just not playing your odds the right way. So, is it so far-fetched to believe that a team that's doing well would try to capitalize on, like, the highest stake that you're probably going to get out of Pelican to see if anybody bites on, like, a crazy number? And is that wrong? I don't think so. And I think we probably see more of this moving forward.
If I'm looking at this team, you really need a good main tank.
Yes.
Like, we collectively all underrated main tanks, I think. Like, we thought of things are going to get it done. They didn't. Like, main tanks are now a rare commodity. There are very few free agents you could even entertain thinking about. Like, someone like Ben Best is maybe a name I would bring up. Someone like Cloudy. Like, these guys, right? Like, I'm not. Then there's the visa situation. I think it's problematic for both of them. So the real solution here is a trade, right? You need to find someone that just fills the holes that you're currently experiencing. Now, the problem is, I'm going to be straight. If you have a quality main tank, you're holding on to that dude. That is probably the most important player on your team now. Yeah. So in order to at all be taken seriously, you gotta sacrifice something.
You gotta ante up,
right? And
hashtag ante up.
And here's where I could see the justification being, because I think whatever upgrade you could get for specifically being the Houston Outlaws, and what I'm about to say is highly controversial, I think, and has nothing to do with this piece, but I could see a world where you get a quality main tank, trade it, and the quality main tank is such an upgrade, filling the holes that you're experiencing, that it actually makes up for the loss of Pelican, especially because you have Dante. Yes. Because here's another little insight. Dante played a bunch in the preseason. I think he probably had the highest play rate of the DPS for the Outlaws. So the Outlaws are aware that this guy is still, like, cracked, and just for the sake of the team, like, he has taken a tank role on because they're having troubles there. This guy is a winner. He just wants to win titles, right? So, like, it's that's probably like the blow. It's crazy to say. I think the blow of losing Pelican would not be astronomical. The benefit of getting like a very good main tank is pretty high. Now, where are you getting that from?
That could be your season. That could be your season winner.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if they land a good main tank. Again, like it's hard to name names just because it's so difficult to see like a successful team letting go of their main tank. But that could ultimately have the Houston Outlaws making a deep playoff run because they've made that move.
Yeah.
And it looks on paper to be, oh my God, how could you get rid of the rookie of the year? Pelican's so good. Da 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 da. It's like you're not losing as much as you think.
And it's also, once again, this is just like one of the options. If I'm general manager, I'm thinking about that as an option. Ultimately, I'm looking at the social structure of this team. Like Dante came out, said like Pelican is like his best friend on the team, stuff like that. Like, are you really going to make a play like that late in season? Ultimately, you're looking at the option and you would have just discarded that anyway, right? Like, you're not making that move. Unless you're like what, bringing back Super or some shit, like you're not doing that shit, right? So, like legitimately, who could you like? Who's even someone worthwhile bringing up here? Like,
I mean, it's so difficult to like make a trade in
you have
inter-region.
You have to like. I almost feel like there's not, unless there's some real hidden talent somewhere that I haven't looked at or discovered that's of age as well. Importantly. Because people will bring up all these players and then not realize they're still 17. Is that you're gonna have to steal someone else's tank from another team and try and do a bait and switch, but like, but you get Pelican. I just need your main tank.
And
like,
the thing is, like, if you had a lot of excess budget, and I'm not sure if you wanted to, but one of your options is Gator, right? Like, it wouldn't be a trade because you're not trading Pelican back to the Atlanta Raid, right? Like, that's not gonna happen.
That'd be funny.
But like
Pelican rejoins the rain.
But like Gator now, like being down and out, I'm not sure if he's already looking at a training at a coaching career or whatever. But like he can play the Winston, you know, the Reinhardt. Like
and also as far as trading goes, Gator's got a lot of experience trading.
Yeah.
True.
Why did you have to do that?
I'm sorry, it was a low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And I went there. I apologized to it. Gator doesn't deserve that from me. My bad. But it was too low hanging, and I was like, fuck it. I like some low hanging fruit. I'm gonna go for it.
But by the way, like, leave it up to the Reddit crowd. Like, at this point, I'm actually laughing about it because, like, the thread about my tweet thread, there was one comment that in some fucked up judo move turned that situation into like memeing on the Atlanta Reign being like the most hated team in the Overwatch League. I don't know how they did it, but it was magical. Like, let me see the magic trick.
Let's, when you're ready, we'll get to your speaking of things that you've talked about and tweeted.
Right.
Do you want me to read all this out? How much of it to read out, or did you kind of wanted to get into it yourself? Because it is your voice here, so I kind of want you to represent your own voice.
I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of cringy for me to read it out. Like, I'm already like mild cringing for us to read it, but like we're good.
You want to summarize it?
Read the whole thing.
Yeah, just summarize it.
Do you want to summarize it, or do you want me to narrate it?
I think like a bunch of points were already brought up. Like, basically, I make the point that every season, these types of hypotheticals, like testing the waters type of things happen. That is my understanding that what's happening here. That as a general manager, you're constantly looking for solutions to the problems that you're facing. And the problems that you might be facing as a general manager are like manifold. Someone's like the Axie situation, someone's sick. Maybe you need a replacement down the line because you know eventually this guy's body is just going to give up on you. And like that's something you keep in the back of your mind. Maybe players aren't getting along. Maybe like your coach is not reaching the players anymore. And there are like many solutions to that problem that you could be making, right? So you're constantly updating your options because the worst thing a good decision maker can go like, okay, I can do this, and just accept two options when it barely ever is binary. The real solution most of the time is like, both of those suck. Let's come up with a third or fourth or fifth, right? And let's see what the market actually, or my environment gives me to play with, right? Like, I want to see the entire river in order to make my poker hand decision, right? So, and then I think, as we talked about, like, it felt, and I'm not sure if it was intended to be meant that way, and there's certainly like ways to read it as to not as aggressively imply that, but I think it can be read in a way that Dante feels like he's being made out to be a diva that just wants to play his role, and he's willing to sacrifice 3 teammates, and I don't think that's what's happening here, right? And for the outlined reasons, because the Outlaws are likely to face issues down the line, this is a bigger motivation, probably one of the problems that a competent general manager is trying to solve. And if you don't solve it, well, then you got to make do and make the best of it, right? Like, and once again, Outlaws 9-3, they're making the best of it, right? So I also say, like, I believe that this happened, right? Like that.
Yeah, of course.
That the Outlaws did actually contact other teams, as every other team constantly does, right? Like the business ways, like, these guys are all in the Discord. Like, the general managers have, I'm not sure if you would call it friendships. There's definitely, like, some general managers are closer to others. Like, the business way is not like, you don't have to, announce yourself to the Queen of Vancouver in order to get access to the halls and be invited for an audience or whatever, right? Like, it's just like, you shoot a DM and see like what is possible, or like, there are trades that are win-win for both teams, which you previously didn't think were possible. Also, you know how sometimes, like, people in the WoW auction house just put like a cookie in for like 2,000 gold and sees if someone misclicks, right?
Sure.
Maybe someone in the market misclicks, just like gives you way too much money because brain fart, right? Like, because overvalue or desperation or whatever. Or
I think there was a definite misclick in the preseason, but neither here nor there.
Yeah, like, we all apply stupid text differently. And I think it's actually rather a statement of quality of a general manager to be constantly doing that.
Yes.
And if they weren't doing that, now you're in trouble. Like, if you're not sourcing those opportunities. And some shit gets wild, and some stuff like trickles through, and like, it is very hard to differentiate intent, right? Like, if you're like, this is really like a fickle situation. And once again, how did I learn this? Because I like didn't communicate the intent situation in the Shock Rascal clearly enough, even though I was aware that this was probably like more like a gamble thing, or like a let's see what they say thing. As much more so than, actually a serious thing. But I should have communicated that more. It blew up on Reddit, and like, it forced some of the former Toronto defined coaching staff to make a statement there, right? Like, I should have been more aware of how I communicate that information, right? So it's just a hard learned lesson, and I think we stand to gain from clearly communicating context when reporting on this, because once again, you're fine to report on this, and I don't think it has been proven yet that you necessarily did anything wrong. And I think it's also wrong to pile on overtly on Halo here.
Speaking of communicating and intent, all that good stuff, a GM might gather all possible solutions, such as looking at free agents, internal restructuring, mindset reset via signing a new coach, trades, etc., in order to weigh those options against each other. Some problems are complex and involve both business, social, and gameplay considerations. I doubt the problem the Outlaws face is mainly Dante being in his feelings about not getting to play his role, and it is probably rightly received as reductive. To be clear, the information shared about the Outlaws allegedly contacting other teams is not surprising. I think the problem is that it's received in a vacuum by the public who think this move is outside the norm. But it isn't. It happens all the time in many teams. In fact, if your GM wasn't looking at all possibilities, I'd be worried then.
Nope.
That could have probably been one tweet. You kind of made that one 2 tweets. But
Yeah, true.
how'd you like that reading?
Very good.
Read aloud. Reading
Still
your
made me
tweets
cringe.
aloud.
That still
Yeah,
made
but
me
if you
cringe.
embrace the cringe, then you embrace freedom. You
Every
understand?
week, I'm just gonna grab some random things you tweeted and read them out loud.
Ooh, now that's scary.
See how they sound. See how it sounds out loud. Any final thoughts on? I think we've reached the end of this topic, but any final thoughts on where we are with all of this now? I think my position has been made clear that
Yeah.
I'm a little unclear on the whole Dante situation.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure that while it is accurate that Outlaws are shopping around, it's not necessarily conclusive that their intent is to just like they desperately want to sell.
Yep.
Also, I don't think anyone's buying. So the end result is I'm pretty sure nothing changes from my perspective.
Mid-season, I think it's really difficult, especially this far in, to like see a big move like that happen. That would be some pretty desperate pockets kind of coming out and writing checks. I still think there is a meta topic that like I really want to get the community kind of started with, because I foresee a world as we approach the 2023 season, as we get the release of Overwatch 2, as we get deeper into this game, as we see more heroes release. I think Yiska rightly kind of pointed something out really early on in Overwatch 1 that like it would probably take 3 years into the game's life cycle to see like the kids that were like raised with Overwatch and to see them kind of like really come out as big talents. And I think we're going to see that pretty early on, as we are this season, right? We're having a huge resurgence of like rookies being a severe metric of success. Yiska's talked about it on the show in past episodes. I think you're going to see some big moves, and I wouldn't be shocked if Pelican does find a home off the Houston Outlaws for a sizable amount of cash. And Houston does some off-season moves and brings in rookies that are also very talented, right? Like I don't think it's going to be completely unheard of. I think you're probably going to see more like offers like this put on the table, and maybe some bites as we get closer to Overwatch 2's release, and eventually that actually coming to fruition with budgets and people getting more bullish on the market. Like you're going to see this be an uptick in communicative. Like this is going to happen more, I think.
I'm gonna shut down one thing really quickly, just because I know this one's swirling around the fan brains. I know somewhere out there's 1 or 50 Dallas Fuel fans that are like, but we could get Pelican. And to that I say, do you really need 3 flex DPSs?
Yeah.
You really need 3 flex DPSs on your team? Guys, come on. I don't think that's the answer. Okay.
God. That's one of those dumb moves that I'm just like, I'm so glad like that hasn't happened. It's just like,
so I just remember early on I'm talking like, yeah, but who could actually buy Pelican? Who could get Pelican on their team?
Dallas probably has the money.
I know there's a non-insignificant number of Dallas Fuel fans like reaching their hands up like, we can get him. And I'm just there like, guys, he's a flex DPS. You don't need a third flex DPS, right? Doha's already benched. You don't need a third one. Let's be honest, guys. Let's be realistic with ourselves. Okay. Next topic. ContendersStrike. Oh my goodness. This feels like old news now. So this is how we balance things out on the show. We do like raw, hot off the press, literally within the last 12 hours, just dropped, babe, wake up, new Halo report just dropped kind of news, right? And now we balance it out by doing something that feels like it's nearly a week old. I don't know if it's a week old, but it's a reasonable way behind. I should really get the sources for this. I'm going to look up. Damn, where is it? I needed to prepare this earlier. So essentially what happened was, I want to find the source and read off that. I might as well do a rough recounting of the situation, since I'm still looking for the thread. which is to say that we had a match in Contenders Europe for A-Size recently, and there was an admin ruling that kind of went awry. So the two teams. Here we go. I'll grab the Path to Pro statement, which I just found now. There's an ex-Oblivion statement as well, and essentially, just gonna make sure I have the exact. So Munich Esports and O1 Esports were playing a match that they believed was a best of 7 game, a first to 4 game. They were told the day prior by admins, they had specifically gotten confirmation from the admin team that it was going to be a best of 7 game, a first to 4 game, and thus in a first to 4/BO7 format, you apply your strategies in a specific way, knowing that you have potentially 7 maps to play through.
Mm-hmm.
So the preparation for a full BO7 is different to the preparation to a BO5. And what ends up happening in the specific match, I think this was in the upper bracket, was that partway through the series, I believe the scoreline was 3-2. So Munich had already had a 3-0. O1 started to make a comeback. They were looking to potentially reverse sweep. They got 2 maps. So the match score now is 3-2.
Mm-hmm.
Before the map 6 starts, the game is ended. It just ends.
Yeah.
And the reasoning was that the admins had reread the rules, or they had kind of they were made aware of some sort of, I'm not going to say rule change. It wasn't a rule change. Supposedly what it was is they misread the rules and they thought it was a best of 7, but in fact it was actually meant to be a best of 5. So written down in the official ruling was meant to be a best of 5.
Right.
According to them. Now we can talk about this in a second, because I think Yiska will have an additional bit of information on that.
Mm-hmm.
But to their knowledge, to the admin knowledge, it was meant to be a best of 5.
Mm-hmm.
So they, under the impression, under the conclusion that they made at the time, that in fact the game was meant to be a best of 5, they ruled the game should just be made over. Ends in a 3-2. I don't even know actually if O1 gets the 2 maps. I think they might have just ended at 3-0. In terms of the official scoreline, they end at as 3-0, even though they played an extra 2 maps. And O1 were, I think, justifiably a little bit upset that.
Sure.
A little bit might be an understatement. Upset that they played 2 maps for no reason, right? Because you've played 2 maps, you've shown strategy. It was also just a waste of time between both teams.
Sure.
And your prep for the day, for both teams, to be honest with you, is kind of failed a bit, because you thought it was going to be 7 maps. You thought it was going to be a BO7. And so they then ended up playing their next game versus ex-Oblivion, which I say play, they didn't end up playing. Both teams went on strike. Contenders Europe generally overall went on strike. And what that means is they refused to play the match. And O1 felt like they were done a disservice there, which I think is reasonably true. And so they just refused to play their next match, and the entire broadcast stalled out, ended, and went on to like a waiting screen for like over an hour while they tried to sort it behind the scenes. And at first the admins were very resistant to change anything, and eventually, long story short, just to sort of cap this up so we can talk about it, is overnight they came to a definitive conclusion that they will play out the series as if it were a first to 4 series, the best of 7. So Munich and O1 were then going to play the remainder of their series that did not get played. So they start again at the 3-2 scoreline and just continue from the 3-2 that they stopped at and continue the series.
Yep.
And then the rest of the contenders would continue from there as normal.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what ended up happening. And then they did play the series. O1 lost anyway. They dropped down the lower bracket. The rest continues. But yeah, there was a whole load of stuff coming out from that.
Yep.
Right. Now, I think additional information that's important is like the players did ask specifically the admins whether or not it was a best of 7, and they were told that it is a best of 7. And on several pages, such as I forget what the tournament host website is called? Is it GameFly?
It's called. Oh, sorry, the tournament.
Where you
mean?
register and
Battlefy.
There it was said best of 7 and stuff like that. So I think what might have also happened is the admin looking at Battlefy and like seeing it's best of 7 and say, whatever. Now, okay, here's you ready for my teacher like constructive feedback moment? The first thing I got to say is, if you believe that you made a mistake in applying the rules, it is pretty gutsy to come out after already 2 maps have concluded and say, sorry guys, we made a mistake. We got to stop the series here. This is actually a best of 5.
Yeah.
In principle, this is actually an admirable thing. Of course, not that you don't catch that stuff in the moment, but like that you have the ability to like confess a mistake and say, okay, sorry, is nice. And it's also nice that in the end they came around and saw the light, right? Now, okay. I mean, there are a couple of fails here.
Oh, just a few. Just a smidge.
For one,
do you want to cover the fact that you read the rules?
Yeah. So
you actually went over the rules?
I like the rules. Okay, so as always, this is all very like convoluted. There are different versions of this, and like I'm still confused as to the like what the actual rule set is that was last communicated. Okay, it's also implicitly by the format you would assume it's best of 7. Because, like, why would you make the winners final best of 5, but then the losers brackets, but under that best of 7 and then best of 5? It doesn't make much sense. Whatever. Sure. I don't know what they thought. So implicitly, it's also a thing, right? I think, like, it being different on... I think there was another source. I forget where it was. Oh, if it was an older version of the rule set and they updated it or whatever. But long story short, there were definitely different signals. And me as a manager of a contenders team should feel secure about asking admins about what actually is happening. And that should be considered. And it's actually impacting competitive integrity to not do so. And to not give way, like at some point, your latest rulebook version arguably counts for less than the repeated rules stating on other platforms, and you explicitly telling the teams that it's best of 7, right? Mm-hmm. At some point, you got to like realize that you have overruled your own rule set. I think that's something that needs to be understood, and otherwise, like if no, like there's no competitive harm being done, if you don't do it as well, right? Like just never saying anything and saying like, okay, but best of 7. Okay, now you're like not catching up on your rules, but if you have the additional knowledge that another admin said this, it's on Battlefy, it's in one of the earlier versions, whatever it is, like there's now overwhelming, and you might disagree with this. Now, here's the problem, of course, like you're saying this to players, that's a fail. You not recognizing immediately in the moment that this match is still going on and that they played 2 maps, which is like almost an hour that it took. Mm-hmm. That's a big fail. You being like almost Streisand affecting your... It's not Streisand effect technically, but like this trended in the United States on Twitter, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like 3rd or 4th or something.
This is nuts.
For a couple hours.
Like you
there was worries that NA was going on. Like NA Contenders side A, if memory serves, was following this broadcast like hours later, and there was concerns that like people would play.
Yeah. So like the snowball effect of that decision, I think you didn't do yourself any favors with the call Like, did you listen to the
No, I didn't.
I did. I think the call being leaked as well, purposely being leaked. It's such a difficult. Okay, this is where I have to be objective and speak to both sides a little bit, because
Sure.
I'm not just going to come out here and just like slam contenders or the admins, even though I think that's what people want. They want a dog pile a little bit here. To speak a little bit more objectively, as Yiska said as well, it's if you're an admin of this tournament, you're caught between a rock and a hard place here.
Sure.
Because on one hand, by what is written in the rule book, or what is by what you have looked at in the rules, and what you're supposed to do, it is meant to be a BO5 game, right? It's meant to be best of 5, and you fucked up because when I say you here, I mean like the entire admin team, because they have to operate as a singular group here. Somebody in the admin team et al. Told the teams it was going to be a best of 7. So now you've basically done two different things here. You said it was a best of 7. It's actually a best of 5. What are you meant to do? If you play out the best of 7, you've gone against the rules as written.
Yeah.
In the book, which is meant to be best of 5. If you play the best of 5, you've effectively lied to the teams.
Yes.
There's no winning now. It's a monstrous fuck up. No matter which way you go, you fucked up. Now, I think the protocol, or it seems like the protocol for the admins, is to follow the rules to the T, because that is, I don't know if I would say that's what is being taught, but that is the general standard in terms of policy. And I want to bring something else up as well, because it's almost a little bit, it's kind of crazy, but almost a year ago to the day, maybe a couple weeks off, there was a whole Noble Ardor situation, which was another Contenders admin ruling fuck up that made some headlines and people got notably upset about. And then Contenders have to come out with an apology, blah, 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 blah. To make a long story short, it was the whole disconnect and using your pause time kind of situation. It was a 5v6 situation, right? I can't remember the exact thing that went down, but one of the teams between Ardor and Noble had a player I think it was Seeker on Noble, maybe disconnected, and Noble used up their entire 10 minutes of pause time to try and get Seeker back in. He couldn't reconnect. And then Ardor, they went ahead and said that they would like to also use their 10-minute pause time to help Seeker get back in, to effectively make it 20 minutes, right? And which is very, selfless of Ardor to do that. They're sacrificing their own pause time to help the opposite team, the enemy team here. But the admin team for this was Contenders NA last year did not allow that and forced the match to be played as the 5v6. And that upset a lot of people. That upset the teams involved. And then Contenders had to issue an apology that says, while the rule book was followed, we recognize, this is the exact statement, while the rule book was followed, we recognize that it negatively impacted the results of the map and apologize to the players and all Contenders fans. We will work on the rules to create better escalation paths for situations such as this and maintain the high level of competitive integrity you have all come to expect from Overwatch Contenders. Ironically, a year later, the rule book was followed again, but it created another shit situation.
Yep.
And this is where, yes, the blame is on the admin team. 100% the blame is on the admin team. But both last year's situation and now this year's situation is that admins, okay, more specifically this year, they made a critical mistake. Last year it was more like, no, we're just going to follow the rules no matter what, as written. They're just going to follow it to the letter of the law, and that's it. And it caused some issues. And, this time around, it's just like, I think this year's situation is way worse, because there's nothing you can defend it with. At least last year, you can be like, well, admins just did their job, whatever. This year, it's like, yeah, they did their job, but they also then, if they did their job, they also lied to the teams, which means they didn't do their job. It's just completely fucked.
Yeah. I agree. I think that a lot of the blame is 100% on the admins. It was frustrating to also be reminded of the Ardor noble situation because again, if you look at that second paragraph, there seemed to have been work put in to ensure that this doesn't necessarily happen again. And that's where I really both point my finger towards Contenders leadership, but also understand with, what's all gone on in how that power structure has changed. I understand how there could be growing pains with, new people coming in and taking this under their wing, let's say. I don't think it ever should get to a point where players, as much as I am, very proud of them and happy to see them collectively, fighting for what I think most people would believe is the right course of action, that, the match should just be replayed. You all fucked up. Let's just move on with things instead of, planting our feet. I feel like the some players had some very pointed screenshots from some of the logs between them and the admins about how they were, again, rightfully reading the rules that if you're not going to play, you could be facing a disqualification and then you could have your prize money pulled. And like, that's fair, but I don't know that's the right course of action with dealing with a disgruntled community at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my big concern. Is that, we can talk about formatting, we can talk about prize money, we can talk about support, we can talk about content, but when you don't have the people or maybe even the resources to have the right people in charge of just making sure the tournaments happen within a like fair manner, that's when I get concerned. That's when I go, okay, yeah, this is actually problematic. Like, yeah, if you don't like bracket resets, okay, fine. We can argue till we're blue in the face about how bracket resets are stupid or great or whatever. But when you don't have leadership, you don't have like proper communication, when you don't have people, referring to the rules or at least reading them in good faith, that's when things get really scary. That's when things like this happen and you have an entire community on strike. And I think that's a great course of action on the players' behalf. And hopefully this stokes some flames on that, sector. But yeah, hopefully this is a big wake-up call going into Overwatch 2 and Contenders B-sides, that this really, really can't happen again. Or you've seen this.
It won't happen again because it takes a fuck up to have an amendment in the rules or some sort of redundancy to make sure, there's an extra clause or there's an asterisk on there that says, but if blah 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 blah.
Yes.
For example, the whole ruling with the time allocation for pauses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I don't think we've had another problem with that. This is a separate fuck up that requires its own.
Agreed.
It's kind of like those situations when you go to like kind of like a hazardous workplace.
Yes.
And you see all the warnings, you see all like the, all the safety instructions. That's all been
because of situations like this.
It's been painstakingly created.
Yes.
It's been written in blood. It's essentially written in fucking blood because people have either been injured or killed for those redundancies that have been made to be like, oh shit, there was a major fuck up here, so now this has to be written to the rules. And so this is why this is probably never going to happen again, because even if the admin policy, and this is standard across esports, by the way, for people that don't follow other esports outside of Overwatch, it is standard in esports for admins to follow the rulings to the letter of the law. Otherwise, what the fuck is the point in the rules?
Sure, yeah.
It requires an amendment in the rules to change things like this. So now in future, if there's an admin fuck up that they basically give misinformation, not even on purpose, just accidentally give misinformation to teams to say, oh, it's a BO7, and then they play out the match, they're going to just play out the BO7 now.
Yep.
Right? In future, they're just going to play it out. We're not going to have the situation again. That doesn't mean we can't have another situation like, okay, cool, Contenders next year, 2023, July again. It's always July, guys. Something just happens. I don't know, like another Contenders moment just happens, maybe. But it'll be a different situation. It'll be a third completely separate situation than the two we've had before now.
Yeah, and I agree. Unfortunately, that growing pains like this, you don't know how ridiculous it can get until it happens, and then you actually have to pull rank and step in and have somebody try to arbitrate and gather all the details, find the right course of action, and then amend the rules. It sucks that this had to happen. And I agree, this will probably never happen exactly the same way again.
Yeah. I'm a little. Yiska, you got something else on your mind about it?
The thing is, honestly, this happens a little too much in Overwatch, and it's not just contenders, right? We just okay. It's not the same thing for sure, but the whole thing with the finals and having the wrong graphics on and whatnot, and creating rule ambiguity there.
That, to be fair, was more of a broadcast.
Yeah.
That didn't impact the teams.
Right.
So from a competitive integrity standpoint, the only thing negatively impacted was, well, I was a bit confused, but whatever, I adjusted. And then the viewers might have been a bit confused, but they adjusted. And I don't think anyone's doing an Overwatch League strike because we didn't play push for map 7. In fact, thank fuck we didn't get to play push for map 7. I think that was a great call, but that's besides the point. That did not affect competitive integrity, at least.
But the mayhem thing, it was then located to have been a rule break, they still played out the entire map before they made the decision, right? They got to be
egregious.
Yeah, they got to be quicker.
Can they be quicker though? Because
stop the play if you're investigating.
The problem is, but under what context stop the play? Because here's the problem: if the admins notice the problem and then they stop the play, then cool. Because but then that kind of defeats the problem because if the admins notice, and they can just make a ruling on the spot. The problem was, let's talk about the mayhem situation briefly. The problem was it was coaches and players on other teams noticing and notifying admins. The issue there is you can't just stop play because now that shit can get abused anytime, and I could just fucking sure. You could say that if you're abusing the system, you should get penalized. But you could there can be situations where benefit of the doubt, or you can have you can have outs, you can have excuses. You can if you wanted to be, hypothetically speaking, if you wanted to be malicious as a coach, abusing the fact that you can just force any game to pause because something, you can just be I don't know, throw out the yellow flag any fucking time, and be like, oh, sorry, I thought it was something, my bad. It's also abusable. You can't just fucking pause the game every time a coach fucking throws the yellow flag.
No, it shouldn't be done based on what coaches tell you. Yes. But we expect referees in sports to make a moment's notice call. They should just know their rules and make the ruling.
They have to.
Right then and there.
Transpose yourself to traditional sports just for a moment. Pick a traditional sport. I don't care which one it is. Imagine the hilarity. Darts. Sure, take darts. Some professional darts player that's just sitting on the sidelines watching as a spectator goes, hey, you can't do that. No, you have to step back. They're not stepping back. And they make a decision on that based on some fan's perspective.
I mean,
I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. That's so goofy.
That is ridiculous, but I find it more ridiculous to go someone goes does an illegal throw. I don't know what it would be.
Yes.
Like a machine assisted throw. Then they play 2 matches of darts and they go, actually, the machine assisted throw you did, that was kind of against the rules. We got to replay the 2 rounds of darts. And you're like, wait, do you not know your rules, bro? Come on.
It is actual comedy when it comes to ruling. And I love Overwatch. Don't get me wrong, guys. I this is not guys,
I know
Overwatch,
what
it
needs
is
to happen.
Funny as fuck.
I know what needs to happen. The coaches that are very good at calling out the rules, they should be the new admins.
Yeah, fine.
Because somehow they catch that shit straight away.
I think we've got a grade A fucking staff behind the scenes that could be great refs. That's all I'm saying.
I also want to say, no mayhem coach is ever allowed to be a ref.
No.
Any coach from any other team can be a ref.
Let me raise you this. I think some defense departments, hire hackers to break the rules, to show holes in systems. Do you also then maybe apply that same logic to mayhem because they also know how to break the rules? What say you there? Are they the
But
hackers
they didn't think they were breaking the rules. Their statement was, "We thought this was legit."
True, but they're so creative that like they're breaking rules that like people don't even realize.
Let's say one more thing about ContendersStrike before we move on, because we are going to move on.
Sure.
The last thing I want to mention about this, and this goes back into the more meta journalism discussion. I don't want to linger on this for too long, because this is a whole can of worms on its own. But like, man, look, I get it. Like Dick Soto and them will report it. They're esports reporters. This is esports news. What the fuck is PC Gamer and shit reporting on? These motherfuckers have never even looked at Overwatch before. What the hell is their problem with all this? Like, here's my issue with journalism in general, is like, this ends up being a pretty, I'll be straight about it, fairly inconsequential thing.
Yeah.
It was a problem. People spoke up about it. Great. I think they should speak up about it. And then it was fixed. It was fucking fixed. Right? Well, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So we're not going to go back in time and undo it. But what the next best thing to do is just to play it out, be fair, and allow it to happen. Like, you can't like 100% fix it, but you can do your best. Right? You can try and glue that shit back up. That's the next best thing to do. So there's two groups of things happening here. There's the group of people that even after, and this is, I think the players are fine, okay, so I'm gonna give the players a free pass on this, but this is a group of fans, like, even after the situation was forced, they're still trying to shove in the whole ContenderStrike thing. It's like, guys, it's resolved.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I think Korea and China should join in. It's like, what the fuck are you saying? It's fucking resolved. Please sit back down. All right. Get off Twitter for a couple minutes.
That's
Jesus
the thing,
Christ.
yo. That's unfortunately where the gold rush starts, because if you're trending on Twitter, someone's writing something about you, dude.
Yeah,
you gotta get those clicks, man.
People are trying to like cause shit and stir just for like just more drama. Let's stir more drama. It's resolved. Pipe down.
If you are arguing in good faith on that front, and like your point is collective bargaining, I think that's fine. But I think you need to have like, you need to be very careful with your wording. Like, if that's what you mean, then say that. People
got to protest. You need an actionable result you're looking for. You need to actually have a demand, right? We are protesting, and there's a demand that we want met. If you were just protesting for the sake of protesting, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Because after like the thing is resolved and you're still going, like, what is the thing you were demanding? Like, what would you like to happen now? Because we can't go back in time. There's no time machine. Sorry, so that can't be a demand. So what else is left? I don't know. And then there's the whole journalistic side. It's just like, why is PC Gamer reporting on this? Why are like these other outlets reporting? Like, you've never talked about Overwatch, let alone Overwatch esports. What the fuck are you doing in here?
It is kind of funny though.
I mean, it's in the public interest if it's a Twitter trend, right? Like,
it is funny.
I do like this is.
It's just so weird. It's like, what?
Yeah,
why,
it's weird, but it's like,
it's a thing that got resolved very quickly, and it keeps getting like signal boosts from all these outlets. I'm like, I understand that like bad news sells, and that's why I fucking hate. Sorry again to you guys.
No,
I'm really sorry. I fucking hate journalism from this perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because they're just trying to capitalize on hate clicks. Yeah. It's like bad news sells. But we've never covered Overwatch before. Let's fucking jump on this bandwagon, even though it's already been resolved.
The algorithm already picked it for us. We might as well.
The problem is like this is unfortunately the equivalent of like a mother going through the shops stealing some beans in order to feed her children. You know, like it's like
woman arrested for stealing legumes.
I fucking hate journalism because it's so despicable. It's like it's such bottom-feeded, like scum behavior. I hate it.
But once again, I'm judo moving into like the consumer sucks. Like that's what's getting clicked, bro. Like it's unfortunately the case.
Yeah, but then you get some shitty consumer who they themselves don't consume Overwatch. They probably don't. They don't play Overwatch. They don't follow Overwatch esports. They click on this thing. It's like, oh, Overwatch bad, and then they move on. It's like, fuck you. It's like you're just people just fucking drive by hating. It's just like, I know it's just fun to hate on Blizzard and Overwatch right now, but it's just all dogpiling. It's all this dogpiling that I can't fucking stand.
Yeah,
it's all like out of context dogpiling as well. Yeah. It's like what new negative headline can we fucking throw out there for people to dogpile on? Yep. Even if it's like inconsequential, fixed within a day, and everyone's moved on. All the fucking normies out there are fucking like getting their kicks off. It's like, shut the fuck up. Move on.
It also unfortunately feels like they are spinning the block on us and just wait for Overwatch to fuck up. Right? Like
it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like, you know, fuck ups like this don't deserve to have some spotlight shined on it and for it to be fixed and resolved and looked at. Joe's left.
Power outage.
I told him journalism was bad, and he's like, "Fuck it, I'm leaving." No, his power went out.
Yeah, because he didn't pay the rules because he's a journalist.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying people shouldn't shine a spotlight on it. But what I am saying is the spotlight got fucking shined. It got resolved, and then anybody else coming in after that, you're literally just bandwagoning and dogpiling for no fucking reason. Once you've come in afterwards and try to like, oh, is the drama still going? It's like, no, go back inside your house.
I think my problem is more
get off the internet.
Like you can, it's in public interest. It's fair game. You just got to be more informed about it. And I think that some of the articles, unfortunately, like, and I sympathize. There's some junior journalists that's told to write 12 articles a day, and they all have to meet some threshold of clicks, and like they look at Twitter, and this is the thing they're writing about today, right? Like
journalism used to have integrity. Now it's all sensationalism. I love that.
Yeah, but that was when you guys still paid $5 for a newspaper. You know, like
that's true. That's true. Fuck consumers. It always comes back to fuck consumers, which I agree with. The world we live in.
Yeah. Yep.
Take me out of this world.
I love how we went. Like, if you think about like how we structured our topics today, it's like ContendersStrike is the past, then the Texas Hard thing was today, and then, you know,
we've done it in the wrong order. We should have done past, present, future.
Yeah, and now
what we've done is present, past, future.
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
So let's get into the future. Joe's on his way back. I don't know how long he's going to take. He can catch up. Let's talk about some jotes.
Oh damn.
Junker Queen and goats. What's the part to break down first? Do we want to dive into the goats part, that old chestnut, or do you want to dive into the junk queen? Let's go dive into the goats parts first. Actually, that's more interesting.
Right.
Damn, Joe needs to be here. He's slowly reconnecting back.
Here. I'm here. I'm just.
Just got your camera back.
I'm getting there.
Good.
We said goats 3 times, and he was summoned. He's some fucked up Beetlejuice.
Right. Goats, and he's
my
there.
goats demon. I'm behind.
So now while his camera gets turned back on, good that you arrived because we're about to talk about something you got involved with recently. You wrote an article recently about like Junker Queen, is goats back, etc., etc., etc. And all it did was spark an entirely. This is the funny thing, is the entire discussion around your article was a bunch of people debating whether the term goat should even be used. It's like, forget about Junker Queen. Everyone's just like, goats. It's like you summoned. I don't know. You said the word goats, and everyone just like tunnel visioned on that word and didn't care about anything else.
Because it is something that like people are just like scarred by, and I say this in the piece as well, where it's just like it communicates something. I just don't know that we're all clear on what it communicates, and most of it's negative. I think people were so like scarred by 2019 and like the prevalence and rigidity of like having a set of like roughly 6 to maybe 7, if you're like being real charitable, heroes that were pretty much run on every map, no matter the game mode. And that was just what we saw for like a good 4 or 5 months. And like that I genuinely believe that scarred people. So like when you see goats,
is this goats trauma?
I genuinely believe in like a very soft way, because I don't want to downplay like actual trauma.
Right.
But like I do believe that's like how people are responding to like junker goats. I looked at this as I was writing it. I just Googled, or I like searched Reddit for like Junker Queen, and like the first 3 posts are Junker Goats. Who's gonna be good at Junker Goats? Oh my god, I hate Junker Goats already. And it's just like, what are we trying to say? And we don't even know if this is gonna happen. Like, guys, please realize that we're not playing on this patch, and the patch that we will be playing on, she's nerfed quite heavily. And like other people have been buffed.
She's not nerfed enough. We're gonna talk about the goats part first and the Junker Queen part later.
Sure.
I don't think she's been nerfed enough to
maybe.
really throw her off the throne currently. There's the second part about all of this is the fact that Super also weighed in to the conversation in a kind of hilarious way, to be honest with you. Where and I'll even play this out for you because it's funny. So give this a listen. This will be a treat, an audio treat for your ears. I will apologize now if it's loud. It might be loud. I don't know. I'll turn down the volume just in case. Here we go.
Dude, see what I mean? This is what I'm talking about. I went to competitive Overwatch. Which owl team will dominate Junker Goats? Can we stop? Can we stop? Like, see what I mean? I'm done with it. Why is every fucking comp some iteration of Goats? Everyone is trying to recreate the peak of Overwatch. See, but they're not ready for that conversation because then when you ask them about Goats, like I hate Goats, and then they idolize it by naming every single comp after it. Why am I so mad about this? Because not every comp is a Goats iteration. Not every comp needs to have a name.
So yeah, that was that.
That's where I would disagree with Super.
And
just that last part.
I see his position. Here's my response to that. First of all, I do want to also say that obviously Super's quite popular. He's got a lot of viewers. He's got a lot of followers. A lot of people are just going to parrot what he says. I get that too. So all the Super parrots will come out and be like, "Why is everything called Goats?" It's like, yeah, you're just copying what Super said. I understand. My position on this is that to me, ironically, Goats is the strongest, most simplest descriptor of what the goal of the composition is,
right?
In like the least amount of words. Context. I don't even personally call it. I call it Goats. I will call it Goats if I'm trying to explain it in a very easy way. But if you've listened to any of my Contenders broadcasts so far this year, I'm 99% sure that I've either never called the composition Goats, or if I have, I've kind of done it in more of like I haven't done it during the game. I haven't just default be like, here, it's Junker Goats again. I've always defaulted to calling it Junker Queen composition. That's what I just call it. I just call it the JQ comp, the JQ healing comp, right? I've never like really defaulted calling it Goats. I might have mentioned it once or twice, because fucking Pixie keeps bringing up fucking piece of shit. He keeps bringing it up. So I mean, he keeps bringing up the Goats thing. I'm like, that's where I'm like coming. It's like we don't need to get into that. Like I'm trying to explain the comp as well, but I also get that. I also get that. Like, to me as well, like if I was to try and explain it easily, Goats is a very all-encompassing, fast, snappy. If I say Goats and you're an Overwatch fan, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So if I say it's Junker Queen Goats, you understand straight away what the goal of the composition is, how it functions. I haven't told you I haven't told you any heroes that gets played with it. All you know is Junker Queen. And I said Goats. And now you have a pretty good idea of what generally the comp is and its structure looks like.
Yeah.
Right. Very straightforward. That's why I think the whole Goats thing is fine. It's not like it's not deeper than that. It's not that deep, guys. It's just an easy way to describe it. That's it.
Here's the disconnect. Some people refer to Goats as an archetype, and some people refer to Goats as a composition. And the way we were introduced to Goats leads towards like makes that confusion possible, because you know what Goats is? Initial Goats had Moira.
Yep.
And then we just moved the goalpost and said, well, now it's Ana. Like now it's Zen.
Now it's Zen.
Yeah.
And then suddenly Sombra comes in and now it's Sombra Goats. Yep. We fucked up there, bro. Like at the latest we fucked up when we still called it Sombra Goats, right? Like, and then so
it got worse.
And then we had
Element
Woats, we had
Element
Oats.
Mystic play it. No, it got worse than that because Element Mystic played it, and now they played 2 DPS, Doom and Sombra, and they call it Doom Sombra Goats or something. I'm like, guys, it's not even 3 tanks and 3 supports anymore. Like, come on, there's 2 DPS in there.
So far away from it.
Yeah. So like Goats purists will like think of Goats, whatever is played in Overwatch League Season 2. I think that's where like Super's comes from. This dude had to scrim this fucking composition with very few iterations for hundreds of hours. I understand his stance. I also understand that there's some confusion because like we were pretty sloppy with that fucking word, man. Like we applying to that shit to everything, and now it has become a compositional archetype, which to my understanding is like a kind of different flavor of Brawl. Is that fair? Or is it a
Kind
different
of.
flavor of Rush?
Saddest thing about
I would say
as we kind of it's
a bit of
what's
both.
the difference between Rush and Brawl to you? Because
That's
that's so
also great.
interchanged as well.
Yeah.
I can probably explain to you what my interpretation of that is, but I don't think that's the community interpretation.
No.
And I've tried to push, but unfortunately, not enough people give me credit for what I try to do here. So I can try and push what I think the differences are, but people just don't give a fuck. So fuck them. Yeah, it comes down to like This is going to sound really contradictory for me. This is like two completely contradicting things I'm about to say, but putting together, which is to say that I would describe the composition as goats, but I would not call it goats. Does that make sense? Like I don't personally call it goats. I just call it the Junker Queen comp, but I still describe it like if I was to give you an impression of what it is, I would still say it's like goats. So I would say it's like goats, but I'm not saying it is goats.
Sure.
Like,
I think that's a good way to correct. I
Yeah.
think like the naming convention is fine because you're also when this is a real meta subject, but like when you talk to people, you also have to make sure that they hear you, right? I know that that's kind of like really stupid to say, but like I think this is like advice for everything all the time forever. If you can't speak to somebody kind of like where they're at, either like intellectually or emotionally, you're never going to actually communicate to them. What GOATS does as a naming convention is just it gets across a lot of information in like one abbreviation.
In 4 letters.
Literally
1 syllable, 4 letters.
Yes.
You know
exactly what he's talking about, right? So like there, I think it's fine. But I think like what I want to like hopefully drive for the future of this game is like growing away from that. So where like we can have different iterations, and I think like, and maybe like you and I are like very aligned on this as well, where there are like archetypical ideas about this game that like are just a better way to describe what we mean and packaging it in a really, really concise way. They just aren't like, they aren't in the zeitgeist yet. Like the idea of what brush is and what brawl is and what poke is and what dive is and like all of these different things. That's where we should be like hedging our bets. That's the like the core of the communication that we should be getting across,
Also,
not like a specific idea.
Joe tried to do a sensationalist title, so fuck him and fuck journalism.
True. True.
You dirty fuck. Yeah.
Listen, nobody's clicking on welcome to my TED Talk where we discuss the ethics of language and why you're all dumb.
You're like, yeah, you have to make sure you talk to people in a way where they can understand. I'm like, that's why I talk down to everyone like they're children, because everyone has children. You're like, you're right, Joe. I do have to talk to people the way they need to be, the way they'll understand. Mental capacity of 5-year-olds is how I got to talk to people. Sure. And if you are more mature than that, you're like, I shouldn't be talked down to. Blame the people that are below you,
blame your peers.
You have to serve the lowest common denominator here. Unfortunately, the slowest person in humanity is the pace that we have to all follow. Unfortunately,
it's hilarious that like Yiska and I came to like lateral conclusions about like some of the way that I framed this.
Yeah,
because in here we talk about I talk about how comparing the Junker Queen composition to GOATS is like those conversations that everybody has with their friends where like some dumbass comes into like the Discord call and it's just like, guys, listen, I've had a unique idea. Yeah, you all need to hear it, okay? What if every food is just a hot or cold liquid? Thoughts. Cereal is just soup. I'm just saying, I know, hot take. Spicy boys, like you've all had those conversations. That's effectively what we're doing in the competitive Overwatch community with GOATS.
It's ironic because when GOATS first came around as a title, it was probably the worst descriptor of what it was because no one knew what the fuck. It's a great name because
it didn't mean anything.
It's a great and awful name. It's great because it's named after the team GOATS, understandable, but it tells you nothing about what the comp is, what it does, why it's called that. If you don't know about the team GOATS, you have no fucking clue what it is. Whereas now, many, many years later, 3-4 years later, we've done a 180, and now everyone knows what GOATS is, and calling things GOATS makes a lot of sense because, again, in 1 syllable and 4 letters, you're like, oh, I know what that is. So if I say Junker Queen GOATS, you're like, yeah, I can get a feeling for what that is.
To that point, I think and I know that like only like 2 people are going to get this, and one of them is on this podcast. Avril, you might as well, depending. I don't know. I think the people or the esports community that has done that the best of like taking like a piece of jargon and like packaging it with a lot of context and a lot of nuance is weirdly enough WoW esports. Like
Right.
think of all of the like absolute like dumb shit names that have been made around arena compositions that just like don't make sense if you don't like if you don't have the context. But because you've played the game and because it's been so like inundated, it is effectively goats.
Yeah. It is. And I would say there was some of the creep going on, definitely. Like there was Cleave initially, but like very early. Cleave was just 2 melees. And then there was Beast Cleave, which was basically like now you had
an enhancement
shaman and a Beastmaster Hunter, right? And then there was Spell Cleave, where like suddenly it was 2 casters that were cleaving.
Yep.
So Cleave really meant like 2 of similar
something
types, where Beast Cleave was like because beasts were summoned by the enhancement shaman in terms of wolves as well or some shit.
Yes.
Like I don't know what it was a little bit more coherent. I will say I was a big fan of like, and that doesn't work in Overwatch as well. I would think, but like
unfortunately,
in what we did in WoW was Rogue Mage Priest became the abbreviation RMP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or RMD, and everyone knew what this meant. You can't do that shit.
I mean, that was those were great naming conventions. Wait, it was very specific. You knew exactly what was being run. It was great.
What was the new meta? Can we form some interesting names out of that? I think like a naming convention. Like the problem is it never becomes like an abbreviation that you could actually. RMP is like short, snappy, only 3 players.
Great. That's fantastic.
Now it's 5 RMP, BD, whatever it would be. Like that's too long, right?
I think a lot of it's probably focused on the tanks, right? That probably.
Sorry, we talking about WoW or Overwatch? I got to keep up here. What's going on?
It's more of like how we approach naming conventions, right? We're using WoW as like a vehicle to say like we also had this problem in the past.
You're like, oh yeah, you know, someone on this podcast will get it. Maybe you'll get it too, Aaron. I'm like, fuck you, Joe. Of course I'm gonna get it. Then you're like, World of Warcraft. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna get this at all.
Well, I was just shooting the dark. I'm like, maybe.
Yeah.
I think.
No, you were right. I was upset, but then I heard World of Warcraft. I'm like, fuck, Joe's actually completely right. I have no idea. I don't play World of Warcraft. This is gonna fly right over my head.
And it's also like one of those like small niche esports that's just like if you're not like in it, I don't know. Yeah, you're probably not going to pay attention to it. So
yeah. So yeah. Let's talk about the actual comp now because we got to discuss the fact that this is about to enter Overwatch League.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm just gonna don't care if this is accurate. I'm just gonna say I'm currently the world's most renowned public expert on Junker Queen goats.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I said public because the private experts, the teams that are scrimming it every day, but they're not here right now. They're not here to speak right now, so it's just going to be me. Yeah, the sad thing about this Junker Queen comp is that it has all of the markings of goats in the style of like, you have to play this comp. It literally works everywhere. If you're not playing this comp, you're probably just going to lose.
Yep.
And it's mega sustain. You know, no one fucking dies, and then everyone fucking dies. And then you also have like super one-sided fights, just like back in Goats, the real Goats, where one person dies and then you get fucking team wiped, right? You know, it's got all of that. It's got all of that part of Goats, but none of the good shit. It's got none of the good things from real Goats, such as, you know, the very specific exact timing of cooldown rotations, ultimate combos, all that kind of stuff. It's got none of that. It's got none of the very nice macro or the like the chess-like gameplay, right? Because original Goats, it had its down points, it had its pros and its cons. It's got all the cons of old Goats and none of the fucking pros. Yeah. Sadly, that's my biggest problem with the Junker Queen stuff. It's got all of the Ooga Booga Smork gameplay of Lucio Moira with none of the complexity and strategy of the actual Goats. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's also why I hate the Lucio Moira gameplay, because it's just like I run at you, I turn off my brain, I turn off my monitor, and I just fucking press W and shift at you, and then, you know, it's a demolition derby, and it's just fucking cars slamming into each other with no strategy.
Yep.
I'm oversimplifying it. Of course, when teams play, there is some strategy involved, but like, compared to like every other comp, compared to every other meta, it's just so brain dead. It's just such a frustratingly boring thing to look at.
Yeah,
We just came
like
out of a
really
great meta.
slow.
We came out of a great meta, and now we're looking at this. Like, what?
And like I'll be a little transparent on like the last meta. When we entered it, it was I said this pretty publicly in like our Discord during some of the watch parties, that it was difficult to kind of watch at first just because of how much impact the DPS had. And it was just kind of like fights were over very, very quickly if like somebody was just hitting rails, or if there was like a flanking Genji or a Tracer just pulses your main support and they just die, or your flex support and they just die, and it's just like, all right, well, that's the fight. Like, dang, like that was really interesting. But it ended up like growing into something that's like very watchable, and I think that also comes with like time when it comes to the broadcast team, or the observer team. Right?
Well, everyone needed to learn the game, because it's also it goes hand in hand with Overwatch too. Like, you have to learn the nuances of like
100%.
What is the strategy behind 5v5. This is why like the general normie player base is like, this game is just deathmatch, because you don't understand the nuance of the strategy yet.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like precedent in terms of how to play 5v5, especially at like the pub level. At the pro level, there's definitely a precedent set now. But, you know, 6v6 had fucking years, like 5 years worth of precedent in play. Of course 6v6 is going to be cleaner, because everyone you have like 5 years to learn how to play the game.
Yep.
And also, you're just standing there behind shields, so it's not particularly hard to do.
And that's what I want to like to circle back to, like the like soft trauma around goats, is I need people to understand that like this is not hide behind the shields, do nothing. Like, there is more activity. There's more ways to like make plays. Yes, the activity is a little bit more focused into like very specific windows, but when you look at like the DPS that are still being run, it's a lot of Genji, it's a lot of Sojourn, maybe some Tracer in there every once in a while, depending on where you are. Maybe there's a Pharah, ooh, spicy. But like, you're still getting some level of individual performance.
The Pharah is only being run, or one of the main reasons Pharah is being run in contenders right now is because she's fucking bugged.
Yes, she's actually broken.
She for some reason charges ultimates 30% faster than she should. There's an existing bug in contenders right now that is live, that is being abused. It allows Pharah to charge ultimate 30% faster, and even then, she's only barely good enough to exist.
Yeah.
Only barely good enough to exist. So the reason why people aren't that, by the way, has been fixed in the most recent live patch.
Gotcha.
The reason why people aren't screaming and complaining more about this bug is because even with this extremely powerful bug for Pharah, she's still not OP. She's still only barely good enough to be played as a niche off meta hero in this meta. That's how fucking strong Junker Queen Ghost is. It's so strong that a broken Pharah that would be fucking disgustingly good in any other meta is only barely existing here. Right? That's, you have contextually, that's how fucking good Junker Queen is.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, let's actually talk about the comp, because at this point, if you've never seen it, you're like, well, what are the actual heroes? You guys have talked for like half an hour about this thing. I don't even know what's being played right now. Junker Queen, obviously. Genji, Sojourn, you brought that up already, Joe. Those are the key two main DPSs.
Yep.
And then your supports are Lucio, Brig. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, someone can speak to this. I believe it's the second time only that we've had a double main support meta. The only other time we've seen a double main support meta was Season 1 Overwatch League, Lucio Mercy. It was Moth meta, Lucio Mercy. Since then, we've never seen another double main support.
Outside of that, it's pretty rare. It is.
I can't think of another double main support meta. I can't.
I can think of like very specific teams. Like I think Houston, but there again, like it's not even worth talking about because
it's off meta, though, right?
Yeah, it's very much off meta.
Because we're talking about meta, we're talking about like this is what you should be running, not like off meta, like some teams doing with some wacky thing.
Yeah, and that's only to support your point, where it's just like you have to reach into the obscure, the off meta to support that. Yeah.
Let me explain how this comp works, and we'll get Yiska to jump in as well. Because I know he's an expert on Junker Queen. Another German hero, love to see it. Why are we playing these heroes? Junker Queen. Okay, let me explain the Junker Queen. By the way, the main reason why she gets played, and I actually said before Contender started playing, and when Junker Queen first got revealed, people asked me, "Is like, is this going to be a good hero?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think so. This is like a slightly better hog, but the problem is, she's still hog. She's just a better hog, right? But hog is still hog. But then she's getting played, and the reason she's getting played, and I had to talk to some teams like, why the fuck is everyone playing Jungle Queen? Like, what's going on here? And the reason is because Commanding Shout is fucking insane. Commanding Shout is so good. Literally one ability. If you removed Commanding Shout, I guarantee you, Junker Queen doesn't get a single ounce of gameplay. No one would fucking even look at her. But because Commanding Shout is so OP, everyone's like, all right, playing this comp. And it's doubly OP because it stacks with everything else Brig and Lucio do. So it's not even just a Junker Queen on its own. Once people discovered that running double main support Brig Lucio with Junker Queen's Commanding Shout was fucking crazy, that is now the only thing you play because it just overpowers everything. The Shout speed boost stacks with Lucio. Speed boosting, for those that don't know, stacks to a maximum of 75%. So all speed boosting together, you can stack it up to a total of 75%. And Lucio and Shout together, I don't think reach 75, but you can get it pretty quick. Yeah. Obviously, major AoE healing. Brig is already very good with any hero that brawls. So, running Brig with Ryan back in the original GOATs, running Brig with even Sigma that we see on some maps where you just want to where it's hard to displace and get rid of the Sigma when the Brig is just there bodyguarding. She's just a great bodyguard that is able to juggle aggro with your tank. She's a very tanky support, and I've heard teams describe her, not even just this meta, but other metas, as like a pseudo second tank sometimes, which I can respect as a very accurate description. Lucio's speed boosting for getting in and out, because the other problem with Junker Queen is she lacks strong mobility, and I know she has a shout, but that's not enough. If it was just a shout alone, I don't think mobility is enough. She does not gap close effectively. But with the Lucio speed boost as well, she now can effectively gap close. Better than that, she can now disengage as well. Because the other problem is not only can you not gap close properly, but you also have no escape options outside the ultimate. You're not going to waste the ultimate. Yep. So if you get into a bad spot, you are dead. But if you have a Lucio to bail you out, now you're talking. Now we're in a really good spot. So those two supports with Junker Queen is crazy. And the reason why Sojin Genji gets played is Sojin's still very strong on the contenders patch. She's not been nerfed yet. So the live patch nerfed her, so she might not get played anymore on the live patch, but on the contenders patch, she's not been nerfed, so still very strong. And then also burst damage is, if you remember, one of the few ways you can get around the mass healing. So no one dies when everyone's being mass healed, but what if you just rail headshot them? Well, suddenly someone dies. Genji's just a great brawler, can survive on the front line with deflect, has great mobility, vertical mobility as well. That comp lacks a lot of vertical mobility, so having something that can play high ground is very strong. Blade is super fucking good. Brig is a great healer for Genji. Still not that much CC to stop the Genji, so he does whatever he wants. And the Genjis are actually, I think, the biggest playmakers now. Having casted a lot of Junker Queen comps now, Genji players are humongous playmakers in those comps. So that's the gist of the rundown.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of postulated on what makes up the community perception around GOATs is the sense of rigidity. And it's very clear when you look at NA, you look at EU, you look at Korea, and obviously China's spinning up sometime soon. Everybody's playing it. Every single region is playing it, and it's subjective in terms of whether or not you think that's good, but what's objective is that since GOATs, since 2019, I think it's been very clear that the overall Overwatch community, be it, Overwatch League or competitive Overwatch or just the average Overwatch fan, enjoys having fluidity in terms of which heroes are being played. Variety.
Use the V word.
Yes, the variety is a good thing for the fans. I have my own opinions on that, but regardless.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It works. That's what draws them in. They like to see teams do some crazy wacky shit, and it works for them. So that's that is objective. I think that
I have a better way to explain that. Okay. I think Yiska had a take though.
No,
I also have an explainer.
Take on the variety generally being accepted. I think new heroes being overpowered to the point that people are definitely playing it. I think you almost always want your new hero to be in the meta following it becoming live. I think from a attraction of viewers perspective, and from an viewers, because if we buy into the fact that a bunch of people are, looking at this in order to learn, like that's now your first source as well, right? Like so. I think it was a little deflating actually when Sojourn wasn't in stage 1 for a lot of people. So, yeah, I think I agree that it shouldn't be the case, and I agree that we are fortunately also pretty slow usually to pick up on new overpowered stuff. But, like, it took us a hard minute to adapt to Ana, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. She needed to actually be buffed.
So it's like, yeah, I think, I think it's unfortunately, as much as it speaks against my own self-interest, I think it's a net benefit if she was to be hard meta.
I have a couple of thoughts on that. One is that it's extremely artificial to have like any sort of discussion around like, oh, but with the new hero's got to be OP to get played. I think let's talk about Sojourn first of all. Part of the reason why Sojourn didn't get played is because Soldier 76 was fucking busted.
Sure, yeah.
Because
busted, much easier to use.
For some reason, it didn't occur to anyone that a DPS movement passive would fucking stack with the sprint, and now this dude runs like Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
So that didn't occur to anybody. That's number one. Number two is like, well, with less shields and Soldier doing 20 damage per shot, you can get a lot of damage, and nothing was blocking that. No divas getting played, no shields exist. He's just sitting there shooting for free. Right? These are the things that you have to consider. So Soldier 76 being busted shoved Sojourn out of the meta. That's number one. I think otherwise Sojourn probably would have gotten played. No, I don't subscribe to like the new hero has to, but this isn't League of Legends where they're selling heroes, they're selling champions, and they want people to buy them. There's no issue with people playing it. Like everyone's, even if the new hero isn't particularly quote unquote strong OP, people are gonna play them just out of novelty. I'm talking at the pub level, at the normal level where people are casually playing. You will always try the new hero out of novelty alone. They don't need to be strong. You will always try them. There's no issue there. People wanting to see them is a different thing. Now, I think there is a strong subset of fans, and I often see this sends me off the rails of like, oh, Overwatch League is all mirror comps. They don't have any variety. And sometimes, look, when we're talking about GOATs, you're right. But if you watch more than 30 seconds of the Overwatch League, and there's another fucking stupid post that I saw that was just like, I watched 30 seconds of Overwatch League and it was boring. I'm like, motherfucker, you literally just admitted you only watched 30 seconds. Shut the fuck up. You've just discredited yourself and your own title. Please. Yeah. It's like you have no self-awareness. Fuck me. I just can't stand it. I know nothing about the subject, but here's my 2 cents. Thank you for that. What was I saying? So yeah, it's like you don't. There definitely is a subset that like they want variety for the sake of variety, but I'm going to argue the opposite end. I also want variety, but I want variety for the depth of strategy. Because to me, variety isn't like, oh, I just want to see my favorite waifu being represented on broadcast. I just want my waifu hero being played because I like to have a wank while watching I like to think it's R34 Overwatch. I'm just mentally masturbating because of uwu character I like, right? Some disgusting crap like that. That's not what it's about. It's about, we look at last meta, very diverse strategy, a lot of viable compositions. I like it when the game is fluid in a way where map choices matter, because map choices indicate what compositions are going to get played, and you have strengths and weaknesses as a team. I spent a lot of time on broadcast on that grand finals talking about map drafting strategy, why it fucking matters, because the different teams between Shock and Gladiators, they have different strengths depending on what map you go to, right? That's why I spent a lot of time talking about it, and that all matters when you have different comps being played. You're playing Rhino, you want to be playing Winston, you want to be playing Doom, you want to stay away from the Sigma maps because that's Kaluja's good shit. You don't want to be going into that. This is the layers of strategy being involved, because different, like Circuit Royale, I think is a great map in the previous meta because it really forced you to adapt to different strategies and play different things, and it forced certain plays with niche picks and like niche strengths to come out and have their time of day. Right? If you're a great sniping player, that's your map. That's you're gonna go to town there, and I think that's healthy for the game.
Yep.
The problem with the Junker Queen is currently the comp around her, this Junker Goats comp around her, is so strong that even on fucking Circuit Royale, teams just playing a fucking Junker Queen mirror. I swear to God. And teams that I've seen try and play Sigma are just getting run over. They are just getting sprinted at full speed and just they're being bent over. They have to bite the fucking pillow. They can't do shit. The Junker Queen just takes them to town. It's like, holy crap, this Junker Queen shit is so broken that like even on circuit, no one's playing Widowmaker. You don't even play Widowmaker. Too slow.
Yep.
What are you doing? Trying to snipe the other team while this Junker Queen's already down your throat? Like, come on, you can't do anything.
Yep.
She's just in your face, just killing your whole team, and you're there trying to snipe. No, too slow. So it's deleted every other strategy from the game because this one strategy is so overwhelming. That's my problem.
And without like circling too far back, I did write a piece about why I thought like this was going to be problematic and like why Junker Queen was either going to like enforce rigid metagames or just be fucking completely useless. And a lot of it came down to commanding shout, a lot of like the utility it provided with the speed and like the extra health. And yes, the live patch does, I don't know how to feel about it. I know that AVRL has like some thoughts on it, and like I don't know, like it's tough to say. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, as it stands right now, I think it is unhealthy for the game to have something so busted that it is just completely creating like rigid atmospheres. But I do side a little bit with Yiska that I think like new heroes, just for the sake of, and I hate saying this, but like publicity, like having
that's so fake, man.
I know it is. I know it is.
That's
it is. It is. Like having things slightly pushed, and when I say pushed, I mean from like the card game jargon, like you're creating things just slightly better, and yes, this is power creep effectively, than they once were, just like a patch.
I don't buy this. I don't buy this. I don't buy this, and the reason I don't buy it is because if you do your job properly, if you're designing this hero properly, here's the solution. It's balanced in a way that it fits into the meta, such that you are not forcing this hero to be meta. She just is.
She just finds a way.
And exists among everything else. It's interwoven perfectly. And what you get is like, oh, on this map, we can run a Junker Queen comp. We can try this and be creative with that. And she just fits in the meta rather than being ham-fisted in. This whole ham-fisting, I have a problem with.
I agree. I don't think it's great, but I think it's unfortunately the reality.
I don't think that's what's happening. I don't think Blizzard are doing that on purpose. I don't think Blizzard are coming out with heroes to be like, let's make this shit OP. I truly don't. Maybe am I naive for thinking that? Possibly. I mean, there's a lot more evidence to suggest that they are making shit OP. I mean, we got Brig, we have Sigma, all came out OP as fuck. I think Echo was. I don't know if she was really. Oh, I don't know if she was super OP. She did get nerfed eventually, but I don't think she was like. I don't think people were saying like, "Oh my god, this is crazy," right from the get go. Even though she was good. But then again, you get heroes like Anna and Orisa and Sombra that took a while, man. Like these heroes were not just like instantly meta. Moira as well. I don't think she was like instantly like, oh man, you got to play Moira. Like so, it's just why I'm like I don't subscribe to this as being a habit. I think sometimes they have unintentionally fucked up and made heroes like Brig and Sigma way too good on release. But I don't think that's their goal. I don't think they sit around in the boardroom or the fucking brainstorm room and they go, what's the next hero? Okay, cool. Increase all their stats by 30%. That's not a conversation that happens.
Yes, no. And that's where like I'll be very specific. I don't know that this is a habit. I don't know if this is an active thought. But it just in terms of a concept, people are going to be a little bit more attracted to viewing some new novel experiences, and like that's the way that we do that is through hero releases,
and they can view that in a healthy way where the hero doesn't just overtake the entire meta.
Correct. And normally
the hero just fits into a normal meta.
Yes, normally I would agree with that. The way the package that they've given us with Junker Queen, I believe makes that very difficult to do. Either she's going to be busted or she's going to be useless.
They didn't. It's probably a little bit hindsight 2020 to say, oh, they should have just known that Commanding Shout would be overpowered. It's literally one ability.
I know.
The rest of the thing is the rest of the kit is pretty balanced and very
agreed. Yeah,
fine.
Fine.
They just overlooked one ability because essentially Junker Queen has Rally on a cooldown.
Yep.
Which in hindsight you should be like, well, obviously that's broken, right?
That seems a little
But
good.
for some reason, I don't know, man. Like 500 HP Brig wasn't broken either, apparently.
Yeah.
Or how about like Sigma with shields that you can put in and out for no cooldowns? And how much HP was a shield again? Something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Something
Absurd.
stupidly high. But that sometimes it just gets past. I don't know. But so now we get the conversation of, okay, she's quote unquote nerfed. What is the nerf you say? Rampage radius is reduced by 1 meter from 6 to 5, I believe. So still
That's
10 meters in diameter. Now just 5. It's 10 meter in diameter instead of 12.
Sure.
What else? Yeah, the shout,
and
obviously.
The decays.
Its range has been reduced by I think 5 meters from 20 to 15.
Yeah.
And then it's got a decay. So now the 100 HP is the decay is only for the team. 100 team HP you give, it decays over 5 seconds. So 20 HP per second, but it got buffed from 4 to 5 seconds. So you lose 20 HP per second, but it goes for 5 seconds now.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't know. From what I've been told, this change will do nothing. From what I gather from teams that are scrimming her, she's still Junker Queen. She still does her shit. And it makes the shout a little less good, but not enough that she's going to get shoved out, from what I've been told, from what I can hear.
Yeah,
It's concerning.
It is concerning because I think where we all agree is that, like, we don't need rigid metagames. We've seen that in the past. We've seen what that does to the viewership. We've seen what that does to, like, interest in the game. And people get tired of it very, very quickly. I think what I'd like to see happen, and I really don't know that this will, because this has to be like a very agile balance team, is like not removing her, but like tuning her back even further. Almost in the way that like Sojourn was, right? We heard some stirrings, and maybe AVRL, you can speak to this as well. You know, in the preseason, that Sojourn was like nuts. Like she was doing crazy damage. She was popping heads. Like it was bad. So they tuned her back. We didn't see her due to X or Y reason, or a little bit of column A, column B. Obviously, with 76, like you said.
No one realized 76 was busted.
Agreed. Yes.
In
100%.
Alpha, people didn't know that 76 was crazy.
Fair.
That's another reason.
So it's like, I would much rather bring her back slowly into the fold with like a little bit more time, instead of just like having the community like be force fed this meta that could be very stagnant for the next month and a half. Like that's a little dangerous for me, because again, like you're already seeing community perception be very, very negative around this. You know, they throw around the goats word, and I would say
some people are like, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a full stage Jungle Queen. I'm like, you don't know what you signed up for.
Yes.
You have no fucking clue what you're about to sign up for.
I think
you don't want that smoke. You don't. You think you do want this,
but you don't.
You don't.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do a little JL and Brack here. You don't fucking want this. Trust me.
I think there are some people who do, not too dissimilar to like some of the, you know, GOAT supporters back in the day. I do think there is like a beauty to GOATs.
Pros.
I know.
But strategy. This shit doesn't. It's like, even if you like GOATs, all the good things about GOATs are not here. You still only get the negative things about GOATs here.
There's always there'll always be some sick fuck who just like enjoys like the most random bits of like media, and like they'll like that, and that's fine. Like I'm glad that like 1% of the population gets to be catered to, but unfortunately that is not successful.
Probably if you drew a Venn diagram between people that want to see this and people that own body pillows, probably a lot of overlap. Probably.
Sure. Like it's not great. I think for the most part, rigidity is bad. It's the modes in which you play this comp also are like very boring, where like you're just kind of like waiting around for like things to happen, and then they happen like really quickly all at once, and then it just kind of like dies again, and it's just it's not good. It's not a great viewing experience. There's some hype moments, but that's
die.
Yeah.
And then, there's a 100 HP commanding shout rally on a cooldown. Their life just got saved. Oh, well. Yeah. And then a fight kicks off because somebody will eventually find a railgun headshot. Eventually. And then you know what else happens? it becomes a 5-0 fight where like the team that loses one player's 4v5 get completely team wiped and cannot do a fucking damn thing about it unless they have ultimates.
Because the comp is like such a
by the way,
well-oiled machine that once you take a cog out, the whole thing falls apart.
Fights can sometimes go so quick. As much as I say, like, here's the contradiction I'm about to have. Well, the fights are equally slow and fast at the same time. When I say they're equally slow and fast, what I mean is when they're slow, they are fucking slow. They drag on.
Yeah.
But when they are fast, it's like, oh, it's over. Like, wait, what happened? It's just done.
Yep.
And in the instances where it's fast, it is so quick that you can watch a control map, and it's like 60+% on the control cap. Nobody has an ultimate yet. Not a single soul has an ultimate, and we're over halfway to finishing the map. Excuse me?
Because all you're doing, like, you also have to, like, for people who don't, like, kind of see the through line here, Junker Queen doesn't have a shield. So, like, you have to play corners like it's your fucking job. And then the only other, like, outs you have in the neutral game are, like, the Jagged Knife, hitting a rail. Maybe if you're really cracked, sneaking your Genji around and, like, getting an assassination. But the neutral state of these team fights are just like sit around and like volleyball like skills back and forth and like hope you hit something. And then you do, and then you win. That's it.
That's actually not a bad description. You're playing tennis and you're just kind of doing volleys back and forth until somebody hits a shot that'll get a point.
It's slightly better than GOATs because GOATs, like, for the general audience, like, there was no DPS, nobody was aiming. It was just like, it was very chess-like. It was very MOBA-esque, and like that's gonna speak to some people, like you said. Like, there is some pros to it, and it's beautiful. But like,
no, ironically, yes and no. Ironically, though, Dive is closer to MOBA. This is people going, what? How is Dive closer to MOBA? Let me explain. Hear me the fuck out. Because in Dive, you actually have to do setups. You actually have to have map control. In a MOBA, if you actually know what a MOBA is, you have to do map control. You have to take map positioning. You have to do fucking warding. You have to play. You have to set up around objectives and do all of that kind of shit. In Dive, you have to play the game at that level of strategic depth where people running around the map doing things. In your gold games, they're fucking around doing nothing. At the pro level in the Overwatch League, they are doing setups. They're scouting. They're getting information. They're setting for dives. They go for flank. They're doing things actively on the map that are very strategic, and that's more like a MOBA than just 5 people fucking running at each other. Because in a real MOBA, it's not ARAM. We're not doing 5v5 on Howling Abyss, fellas. We're doing Summoner's Rift here, where it's a big-ass map, and 5 people doing things around the map, playing for objectives, setting up, warding, information, scouting, flanking, all this kind of shit. That's how a MOBA actually works, by the way.
And you're baiting resources, you're trading resources here and there. Unfortunately, when we have like very rush mirrors or like even just like rigid like mirror matchups, those trades are a little bit more apparent, but they're a lot less interesting, right? Like, oh, you got out like all of the brig packs before like the team fight started. Oh, okay, you just win. Now Genji gets to run around uncontested and like gets to bully the enemy Genji, gets to take over the entire map, and then you kill somebody and you win. Like, it gets a lot less interesting when there isn't like an interesting dichotomy of like, oh, okay, like I see like where like the lamp comes in for the Baptiste, or like, oh, okay, like Moira's coming in to like try to mitigate the Dragon Blade, and like there's a little bit more thought there. But when things are like super rigid, it's very obvious what is happening, but it's not interesting.
Okay, I wonder if Yiska has any thoughts on this, but I will say one other thing about this to give a really strong example of why the depth of strategy is so low, especially compared to a thing like GOATs. Even though we're saying the word GOATs, I'm saying that the pros of GOATs, which is the depth of strategy and the counterplay and all the cooldown timings, don't exist in Jungle GOATs because you literally have strategies right now. And this is being played from top down. I cast both Contenders Korea and Australia. So I'm seeing the best and I don't want to say worst, but some of the lower teams in the Contender system, the literal best teams in the Contender system and some of the more middling lower ones, all doing the same shit, which is sometimes, more than sometimes, oftentimes, you are double overlapping both your support ultimates just to run at the other team. Not to counter anything.
Nope. Just engage.
You're saying like, oh, don't you hold sound barrier to counter Rampage or Blade? I'm like, sometimes, if they line up. But a lot of times, I literally see, again, this is from the top to the bottom, the best Contenders Korean teams to the bottom of the Contenders Australia teams, literally the highest and the lowest here, all doing the same thing. You use your sound barrier and your rally at the same fucking time. You don't counter shit. You don't counter anything. You don't even think about what the other team's doing. You use both your support ultimates and you just press W.
Yeah.
You run at the other team, double support ultimates, commanding shot about 1,000 fucking green HP, running at the other team. No counterplay, no countering
literally none.
ultimates. Fuck the blade, fuck the rampage. We're double support ultimating in just to run at the other team, demolition derby style. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
The actual counterplay there is to run away.
Just run.
Yes.
No, the actual counter, it's either run, it's a fight or flight. The counterplay is we are going to run backwards, or we are also going to double support ultimates and run at you. Demolition derby
but
style.
that's what I'm saying. It's just so uninteresting.
Whatever monster truck has more armoring on it gets to fucking win. Wow.
Who
Much
fractionally
strategy, guys.
had more rallied uptime and across the entire team, effectively wins. It's just not interesting. I hate to say this because like there is like a very succinct it's easy to understand when teams are just playing the same thing, and like there are some little intricacies, and I think like to circle back to the Moira or Zenyatta goats discussion, I feel like Zenyatta was like a anti-goats adaptation to the goats meta for goats, weirdly enough.
Was it?
I think so.
You discord the Rhine and then you trans the bullshit on the other side.
Yes,
You save transfer counters. People actually saved ultimates to counter each other in goats.
Mm-hmm.
Barely see that shit happening in Junker Goats currently.
Because you're also, you can't, like, we know that proactive Overwatch is good Overwatch, and I don't think that's really changed in Overwatch 2. And the way that Junker Queen set up is she doesn't really take space all that great, but unfortunately, the two supports that are great with her try to alleviate that by just like jamming resources into her face.
Hey, she takes space pretty fucking good, and she got 1,000 green HP running at you full speed. Mach 10 running at you with 1,000 of green HP.
And that's the issue, because like she synergizes so well with that with commanding shout, and it's just like, yeah, that ability just can't exist.
By the way,
it just can't. It's either going to be dog shit or it's going to be nuts.
No, you can balance that. It doesn't have to be dog shit. But what I'm going to say is, like, people think I'm being hyperbolic. I'm not. Watch the fucking games.
Yes.
I've casted like 50 of them by now. Watch the fucking games. I'm not being hyperbolic. This is legitimately what is happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm both not holding back, nor am I sensational. I'm not a journalist. I'm not sensationalizing this. This is legitimately what is happening down to the fucking T. I promise you.
Goodbye, Joe. No, but I think like what you're just saying is like there's low skill expression, and that's always unsatisfying. I think the less you could argue, like, I don't know, it feels like, what would you rather watch? Like two armies running into each other, Braveheart style, and it's just like one fucking pile of bodies. Mm-hmm. Or like, a Matrix style choreographed, like shootout. That's it. It eventually just comes down to those two situations. And it's also something to be said about length of team fights, where like the less decisions you make, the less skill expression happens, the less entertaining it probably is. It also just feels like I think this is probably something that I would expect to happen. Is this is just a very good strategy right now. So not just the composition, but the way how it's played, like this very like low rate of error or expected error. I guess you could say high skill floor. Is just not satisfying, and eventually I could even see like some sophistication in the comp. We don't know if you would ever see that skill expression in that composition. Maybe like there's something cool to be done with cooldowns.
Careful now.
That's getting too nuanced to the point where we once again like, this is probably more stupid than goats, right? Like,
there's not no skill expression, because you can still, when there's Sojin and Genji in play. Actually, the best part about this meta, and be aware, I'm Stockholm syndromed as fuck when I say this, because I'm having to just fucking watch this bullshit over and over and over. The one redeeming part about it is that Genji actually has a lot of skill expression, can do some cool shit, and the Sojin can sometimes do that as well. But outside of the very rare moments where like someone gets a really awesome blade and does some cool stuff, it's just like I don't,
It's
for
trench
the
warfare.
audio listeners, I'm ramming my fists into each other nonstop. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Like 90% of the time it's that. 10% of the time it might be a Sojourn or Genji popping off.
Yep. It's not a great watch. It's either meatballs clashing or it's trench warfare. Like, and the second somebody gets their helmet blown off, then everybody's rushing no man's land, and you've already you know the fight's won. You know it's already over because there's really not much you can do.
It's especially bad because Joe, we just came out of a good meta.
I know, that's what's so frustrating.
Madness was so good.
I know.
Come on. What?
I know. And that's where I'm like, okay, until we can figure out what to do with Junker Queen, this is gonna sound heretical. Just take her out. Like, stop.
That they're not gonna take her out.
I know they're not. I know I'm speaking to like absolutely nobody. I know it's heretical. I know it's not gonna happen. But it's such a disappointment because you're right. We did just get out of like a really colorful, really high skill expression. Lots of schools of thought. Is this good? Is this bad? Where does this work? Where does that work? Like you said, like, the map drafting. It was brilliant. It was so good.
I don't believe it's either like, you know, 2 freight trains or fucking trench warfare, because we literally just got some of the best Overwatch we've ever seen. You know, we're accurately saying that in the Mid-Season Madness tournament, there's some of the greatest matches of Overwatch ever being played. And I truly believe, I stand by that. Here's the level of depth and nuance we just came from. We were literally having debates about like, on a very specific map, on only 2 points on this very one niche map, can you run this one niche hero just to like get a 10% or 5% advantage over the other team? Is it good for Shock to run a diva on only A and B of Eichenwalde just to get like a 5% advantage over the Winston, over this gladiators thing they're doing? Is it we're getting down to this level of granularity because that shit fucking matters. And we went from that to no, play Jungle Queen everywhere. Right? We literally talked about like, can you run an extremely niche hero like Diva on just a tiny portion of one map only as a level of skill expression to forget everything. Don't forget about even running anything outside of these 5 heroes. Only these 5 heroes will get played unless it's people trying to abuse the Firebug. And then in response to people abusing the Firebug, it's people playing Echo to try and counter the fire. That's the only time you see other heroes come out.
Yeah, it's... I do think that... To play slightly devil's advocate, I do think eventually, given enough time, we could see the meta break, much like we did with goats. I do believe that we did see the beginnings of the cracks of the goats meta, and without Rollock, I do believe we probably would have seen a lot of teams adopt that DPS heavy style, and things would have balanced out a little bit. But with Rollock, obviously that, you know, hampered goats being played, obviously. And I do think that could probably happen now, given enough time. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of time. We have 1 beta cycle until we get another big patch and perhaps a brand new hero that also could either make this comp even better or make their own busted comp. So it's unfortunately just probably going to be very rigid if Junker Queen isn't like properly dealt with.
This has been a really long episode so far, so we're going to start dialing it back now as we head out. I want to say one last thing about Jungle Queen. I'll get your individual thoughts on that as well, which is to say that my personal take and belief is that I don't believe that you can realistically ever make a good composition around Jungle Queen based on her intrinsic design. It's got nothing to do with Commanding Shout. Even if you deleted Commanding Shout, if you think theoretically, what kind of composition would you need to build around the JQ to make her effective, Shout or no Shout? And it always comes down to like either some high sustain comp or some like Lucio Moira rush style. If it's not Lucio Brig, it's Lucio Moira rush style. You can't play her in an effective dive, in like a classic dive, because classic dive has very slow moments where you are taking space and you do need to, you know, be able to eat damage. You're making map control happen. There's no verticality in dive. You need dive tanks, right? You can't just like have a ground base. You can't just have a Roadhog in a dive composition, can you? Even a Roadhog that can Commanding Shout run at you, that's not fast enough. You can't play her in a poke comp because she literally doesn't have a shield, doesn't do consistent range damage, just loses. So she can only exist in like this rush archetype, right? This like, I run at you as fast as I can and just fuck you with my axe archetype. That's literally the only place she can exist. And therefore, I don't believe there's any good like strategical depth fun to watch. Unless you just love watching bullshit. To me, I hate it. There's no like good strategical depth,
Yeah.
fun composition to see her in. So my conclusion that I'm trying to make here, summary, is that if she exists in the meta at all, I don't think it's healthy, personally, because it means we're watching a bullshit comp. If she exists, we are watching a bullshit comp.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we're coming to like a similar like point. I think just in different ways. I put a lot more weight into the shot. Obviously, you don't. But I would agree. Yeah, like if she's in the meta with her current kit, there's not a ton of ways. I think you put it really well. Like there's not a ton of ways to facilitate her without having like metas that are just like inherently rigid and just like not really all that fun to watch. I think people enjoy Rush in like sporadic doses, but when it's just the thing that you do, yeah, I don't know that people like really enjoy like the meatball mirrors and like people just running it down every single map, and that's where it gets problematic. So yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
It's
I like it as cheese. I like it as cheese
Sure,
to
yeah,
bring
a
out that one
style.
time to surprise your opponent.
Sure.
But if it's
I'm out
so
of time.
strong that's the only thing that gets played, then that needs to fuck right off.
Yes, and
Yiska.
I hope it's I hope they're agile and they fix this.
Yep.
German thoughts.
German thoughts on I mean, yeah, there are definitely additional balance changes. I think from what I gather from the community, unfortunately, they enjoy themselves some. Look, Riot does it all the time. Why is every second, at least every second champion like fucking busted up on?
I have a counterpoint.
Yeah.
You say that, you say like, oh, the champions are busted, and then it gets played in pro play. No, it doesn't, because it can get banned in pro play. They have an actual drafting system.
tools.
If some shit's actually broken,
Okay.
the teams and players will decide not to play it. So that doesn't apply.
I conceded. I revoke my counter argument. Yeah, no, that's of course like you definitely have some checks and balances in place in order to like catch the biggest bullshit that you're throwing in there. But yeah, I think it's also going forward. It's unfortunately it's one of the live service game, playbooks. I think, unfortunately.
And that's where I wonder on behalf of AVRL. I don't know that it. I don't know if it has to, and I don't know that it. Well, okay, I think it has to some degree. In some ways, it's a good thing if you do this to a minor degree, but I don't even know if it's an active choice. I really don't. And to your point around, and hopefully I'm not misquoting you. Maybe there is a large portion of the community that is excited to see Junker Queen, but I promise you that will change.
That novelty
after
will last a week.
Yeah, because it's every map, all the time, every point, forever. We know this isn't what you want. I promise you. Like, this isn't. I know this sounds like J. Allen Brack like telling people they don't want classic and pulling more people than retail.
Except now it's correct. Except now it's accurate.
This time I promise you, like this is not what you want. We've seen this before, and most of the community hated it. That's why you call it goats, guys.
If I'm telling you that even on a very specific map like Circuit Royale, where you specifically previously needed to run shit like Widowmaker and Sigma, even on that map you are playing JQ mirrors, there's a fucking problem. There's a major fucking problem. I'm telling you. And for the one Andy that I know is already in the comments right now is like, yeah, but AVRL, on Dorado, this one team played Winston. Cool. Exception to the rule. One team experimented. 99.99999% of other teams don't do that shit. Don't talk to me about one time something happened as if that's a standard. That's not the standard. That's an exception.
Now, I will come to your defense if we end up, any like 2 week from now, YouTube frogs or audio frogs are going and looking at like the first couple of games of Summer Showdown and be like, why are you guys so mad about Junker Queen? She's not even being played because the nerfs are so good. Like, that's fine. That's great. Awesome. I'm glad that like the horizon has the utopia for you. But like as it stands right now, and from what people with a lot more, sensitivity to the subject, or closeness with or experience with the hero, and they're already saying this isn't enough. Yeah,
Dude.
it's probably enough to like maybe ring the alarm bells and say, maybe there's some issue here. I'm of the opinion that maybe we can find some solutions, but like I hear some of the concern for sure.
If we actually get into Summer Showdown, and she doesn't get us played as much as I'm saying, and by the way, we are in a different patch than Summer Showdown.
Yes.
I will repeat myself. What I'm hearing behind the scenes is that she's still getting played a lot, even on the current patch, the live patch. That's what I'm saying. That's where the concern is. If I had heard the opposite and be like, oh no, she's fucked, no one's playing her anymore, I'd be like, oh, there's no problem.
Yeah, no
there.
problem. Yep.
But I would love it if I was wrong and we weren't playing that much. If we even reduced her playtime by 50%,
that'd be great.
I'd be ecstatic for
Yes.
Summer Showdown. I'd be the happiest incorrect person in the world.
Yep.
Believe me. And I will happily also block any motherfucker trying to come at me as well, because you don't understand context.
Queen.
I'm complaining about it from a state of what I'm seeing contenders, not on the live patch, because I haven't seen any games in the live patch, because there haven't fucking been any games in the live patch. It's just concerns about like what she could be when we get into the live game on Summer Showdown, and I hope it's not that, but I'm pretty damn certain it is. So
yeah,
fingers
crossed.
Fingers crossed. Next episode, we're going to do power rankings. That episode might not come out until a few extra days after. So tune in.
Figure it out.
And then
usually
hoping for the best. I'm going to try and get a few more updates on where people are taking Junker Queen in the Overwatch League. I think there is one savior. There is one saint, savior, angel sent from heaven that can save us from all this Junker Queen bullshit in the Overwatch League. And that person's name is Hardy. He can save us with the Rhine. Please, Hardy. Please, Christopher. Please, London.
That's Pandora's box, AVRL.
As a certified Reinhardt hater, I would want nothing more than to have Reinhardt come down from heaven with angelic wings like Mercy in that fucking cinematic and just rid us of this plague of Junker Queen. Delete Junker Queen with a mighty German engineered hammer. Please, Hardy. Please, I beg of you. And that is going to be episode 253. Catch you next time.